you guys get? It is C. We know they're not employees of the beeper, the governor, or the government in lieu of being salaried employees. We know how they're compensated. We know how they're chosen. We're going to have some questions about that in just a moment. Members of FREC are appointed by? Yes, correct answer is D as in Delta. Which duty is an exercise of FREC's quasi-legislative power? Promulgate, adopt rules, regulations. 4, real estate licensees on active duty with the U.S. Army are required to renew their licenses when?
D.
Correct answer is D as in Delta. Let me fix that real quick. I think we can do sound output. We can do that now. That should work. Uh-oh. Stuart Reynolds. Okay. The term of office for each commission member is? Yeah, it's 4-year staggered terms. You got it. 6, the members of FREC receive? C, $50 per diem plus reimbursement for out-of-pocket expenses, such as travel, meals, accommodation. 7, which commission responsibility is an exercise of its quasi-judicial power? It's D as in Delta, grant or deny license applications. The commission is not empowered to?
D.
It's C, because imprisonment is something that they are not allowed to impose. They can't put you in jail. They can't force you to pay somebody in a lawsuit, but they can recommend. They're limited to, remember, they have executive authority, control over your license. So the most severe penalty FREC can impose is to do what with your license? Revocation of your real estate license. You got it. Specific responsibilities of FREC do not include? It is D, because that's the beeper's responsibility. Yep. Under the division of professions. 10, which power is not granted under or granted to the beeper under Florida Statute 455? Appoint FREC members, because each new governor gets to do that. Number 11, which statement regarding the beeper is true? It is B. The beeper operates under the executive branch of the Florida government. Straightforward. 12, FREC may reinstate a null and void license when? Yes, it's A. You have to prove a physical or economic hardship to receive that exception to the rule. 13, how many members of FREC may hold a current active sales associate license? It's 1. Correct answer is A as in Alpha. If an active licensee fails to renew their 32-year license before the expiration date on the license what? It's A. It will revert to involuntary inactive status at the end of the license period. To further that topic, number 15, an involuntary inactive license, which means they're already late to complete their CE, will become null and void without further action by FREC or the beeper after 2 years. So how long could you be late? 2 years. But that's for your 14-hour CE, not for your first renewal. You're late by 1 day for your first, your post, your license becomes null and void. 16, who may not reactivate a license to active status? We just mentioned this, yeah. If you're late to complete your first renewal. 17, an owner developer owns properties, several properties with different names, but all of the entities are closely connected and controlled by the owner developer. An associate working for that owner developer may legally obtain a group license. You got it. To sell for all of the affiliated entities. 18, a broker moves his real estate office to a new trendy location. He's so busy with the move, he forgets to notify the beeper the broker's license. Yes, if you fail to notify, your license will cease to be enforced. Don't confuse that with involuntary inactive. That's if you fail to renew on time. 19, which statement is true regarding multiple licenses? B. It is B. Broker who qualifies as a broker for more than one brokerage entity holds multiple licenses. And 20, a broker decides to relocate her real estate brokerage office. She notifies the beeper of the change in business address. She Also informs the beeper of the names of the associates who are no longer associated with their brokerage. The sales associates licenses will be what? It is D as in Delta, placed on inactive status. Any questions here? How do you guys feel about these questions? Unit 3, pretty straightforward. Let's move on. Unit 4, which was all about those relationships. So if we can review those 3 relationships right now before we actually get into the questions, just like we did at the end of class yesterday. The no brokerage relationship. You're hired not to represent, not to negotiate. You're limited to just taking care of the what? Yeah, the contracts used to solidify the deal involved in the transaction. And you could be compensated as such. Everything's negotiable. The transaction broker relationship. Representation does exist, but you're not limited to one side. You can represent both sides, and you can make a commish off of both sides. But you must remain what? Neutral. They describe this as express or exercising limited confidentiality. And that essentially means you're impartial in the transaction. So you don't have loyalty or obedience to either side. You don't have alliance with either side. And the single agent relationship, you're going to choose your side. Whatever side you select, you have fiduciary with them. It's the only relationship out of the 3 where fiduciary exists. Even though there's 3 and you can select any one of those 3, which one is automatically assumed in the state of Florida? Transaction broker. So if you don't specify otherwise, you're a transaction broker, which means you can represent both sides. Now, if you have a single agent relationship with one side, the only other way that you can assist the other side is with what relationship? If you already have alliance with one side, yes, no brokerage, just take care of the paperwork for the other side. Since single agency is the only one out of the 3 where fiduciary exists, alliance, what do you refer to that party as that you're working with in that relationship? A principal, yes. With the other 2, no brokerage relationship, transaction broker relationship, because fiduciary does not exist, what are they called? The party that you're working with, buyer and or seller. What are they called? Starts with a C. Say it. Customer, yes. It's a good review. And we're going to see some of what we discuss, most of what we discuss here in front of us. Number 1, a real estate brokerage company has entered into a single agent relationship with a buyer. The brokerage company also has a single agent relationship with a seller. I'm just paraphrasing. Is this acceptable to bring these 2 parties together in the same transaction? You have a single agent relationship with both sides, alliance with both sides. Even though it's you and your coworker, you're still under the same umbrella, still with the same brokerage company. That's an illegal dual agency, unacceptable. But what if you want to accomplish bringing these 2 parties together? You can't do so with a single agent relationship, but you could with what relationship? Transaction broker, while remaining neutral. But you have to get both parties to sign an agreement. It's called the consent to transition to transaction broker form. You're getting consent to switch to the transaction broker relationship. D is in Delta is what you're looking for. Both parties must sign the transition to transaction broker relationship. There you go. Number 2, the brokerage relationship disclosure requirements in Chapter 475 of the Florida statutes apply to? Yeah, we're looking for the sale of residential property. A common mistake is selecting C because you might have seen residential and you're thinking, okay, it's residential, the rules apply, but it says residential lease. And this specific requirement to disclose the relationship and your duties only exists for the sale of residential property. And a lease is not a sale. 3, which statement best describes the duty of loyalty in a single agent relationship? Yeah, that's pretty easy. It's A as an alpha. Broker must act in the keyword best interests of the principal. Keyword principal. Number 4, a real estate broker who works in a keyword limited capacity for both sides is a what? Transaction broker. B as in Bravo. 5, a licensee of ABC Realty must give the no brokerage relationship notice to. When most likely would you utilize the no brokerage relationship? When you're dealing with a FSBO, for sale by owner, the name itself tells you that they don't want you to sell. It's for sale by the owner, not you, not an agent. But once I find a buyer, negotiate a price, I need help with the contracts. So no brokerage would be the best arrangement. 6, a broker has listed a seller's property. The seller has disclosed to the broker that the ceramic tile is loose in the dining room and it's covered by a rug to protect the seller's toddler. What must you do now that you have knowledge of this latent defect? Doesn't matter how small. What's your duty? It's B as in Bravo. Disclose that the ceramic tile is loose in the dining room and you fulfill your obligations. What if there's a cracked tile that's out in the open? Must you disclose? No. What if somebody died in the property? Must you disclose? No. What if the previous owner was a drug dealer? Must you disclose? No. Good job. A transaction broker has has all the duties listed below except obedience, because that's the duty of the single agent relationship, not transaction broker. Number 8, a seller lists her home. Okay, let me paraphrase this. You receive 2 offers on a home. What's your duty?
To disclose.
Yeah, present all offers. Do you get to decide which offer is most attractive and only present the most attractive offer? No, you must present all. There is a stipulation in a listing contract. I'm just giving you a heads up. That's not in your textbook. In a listing contract, you can specify present verbal and written offers or only present written offers. I'm going to select the second one because I'm not going to waste my time with people that are just calling to inquire. It's the neighbor, right? They just want to size up like, okay, so what's the selling price? What do they're trying to get information to kind of figure out what they should sell their property for. And it's like, okay, you're not really serious about buying this. Put it in writing. Have you seen the property yet? Take a tour first, schedule a tour, and then we'll go from there. So the correct answer is D as in Delta. 9, in the common public relationship that exists in a typical real estate transaction, buyers and sellers are said to be dealing at, yes, at arm's length with one another. Also known as, Latin phrase. Do you remember the Latin phrase? Caveat emptor. Caveat emptor, which translates to let the buyer beware. 10, if a principal gives the broker instructions that will result in loss or harm to the principal, the broker what? It's D as in Delta, longest answer. Inform of the possible harm inherent to the instructions, and do as instructed because you have free will as a human being, and suffer the consequences if it's something unethical, illegal, or even better, withdraw from the relationship if they're insisting. 11, a broker's obligations to consumers with whom the brokerage firm have a no brokerage relationship include the duty of accounting for all funds, easy enough. Designated sales associates are best described as A, single agents for both sides of the transaction, non-residential transaction. And it says the buyer and the seller have to meet certain asset thresholds. What are those asset thresholds? They have to have assets of how much? What's the dollar figure?
Million.
$1 million or more. 13, which relationship is a general agency relationship? B as in Bravo, relationship between an employing broker and their associate. They try to trick you with broker associate. Remember, they're still an associate. 14, which action will terminate a single agent relationship with a principal who has listed a home for sale with a brokerage? Yeah, it's D as in Delta, destruction by a large sinkhole. 15, a real estate broker and their associates are obligated to which duty in all 3 relationships? Deal honestly and fairly. Any questions here? All right, let's take a break. I want you guys to be back at 9:40. 9:40. Stretch out, grab a snack, do what you got to do. Be ready to rock and roll. Might just grab this deal right here. Turnkey, duplex, Titusville, cash flow potential. Yeah, $200,000. We'll see what happens.
Prioritize, well,
What was that?
it's about prioritize, so that's the big question.
It doesn't matter for me. I'll buy in the rough areas. Just as long as right. It's all about cash flow for me, at least. The also Section 8. So Section 8 is always in demand. So I might put Section 8 tenants in it, and that's consistent government income every single month. But anyhow, it's a game. See if we can get some good volume out of this today. Or not. Standard lease is just $2,500 a month, period. we can also start as a standard lease and convert to rent to own. Units added for mooring. Search for remote purchase. Empty. All right, enough of that Starboy stuff. Close this out quick. Okay. It's cold today. It's tough, man. It's snowing. It's snowing in Florida right now. I don't know if you've seen it on the news. I mean, it's pretty insane. Um, in the Panhandle, and if you watch the videos, it just looks crazy.
Tallahassee has 3 snow.
3 snow days. I feel like driving up just to be a part of history. Say that I was in snow in Florida, you know. Maybe good for the kids. Or maybe if climate change is actually real, then we'll expect it every single year. We'll see. Let's continue with our session for today, which we're going to begin with Unit 5. Unit 5 is the most important unit in the textbook by sheer percentage that you're going to see on your state exam. 12% of your state exam will come from this unit specifically. Yep. So we need to pay attention. We need to highlight as much as possible, take notes. I'll show you the most important parts, of course, and this is the updated version. This reflects what's in your textbook. And I also included the highlights for your final exam within this unit. And of course, the next unit for today, I have to go backwards. I just got it literally last night, so I had very little time to actually, but I made sure that I had enough for today's session, and I'll make sure I go backwards and give you the highlights for those other units that we went through as far as what you're going to see on your final exam. You'll notice it's not in order. It's not 1 through 100, obviously. So it's scattered. It's mixed throughout the textbook, but you'll have all 100 pieces of content. And you can spend the time to make your own study guide. I'll leave that in your hands. I'm not going to make a study guide for you, but I'll give you the information you need. So you can take a note of it, make flashcards, whatever you got to do, but you'll have all the information. Sound good? All right. So who's going to pass their final exam? Yes. Okay, please. Don't make me look bad. I gave you everything you need. We can't point fingers at that point. So what is Unit 5 all about? Real estate brokerage activities, procedures. It's important to know as an associate, how do you operate within a brokerage company? What's your duties? What procedures must you follow operating under the supervision of a broker? Let's actually begin on page 90. Here we go. Page 90. Our first topic, line 8, brokerage what? I'm going to make this super simple. A broker, once you get the broker's license, all active brokers are required to have an office. Look at the first sentence. And to register that office with whom? With the beeper. Let's talk about features of that brokerage office that you register. What are the acceptable features of a brokerage office to meet the requirements so you can operate out of that location? You'll see right here, it says, must consist of at least one enclosed room in a building of what type of construction? Stationary construction that provides privacy to conduct negotiations and closings of real estate, what? Transactions. Pretty straightforward, right? I'll come back to that though. It says you don't have to keep the accounting books, records, real estate transaction files within the office, because now you can store documents. How? Yeah, exactly. Online, electronic, terabyte hard drive. Before you did, that was a requirement. You had to keep documents, physical documents in the office filing cabinet. And how long must you retain documents? 5 years. Imagine how many transactions you can do in 5 years as a brokerage company and having all the documents in your back office. It was a wall of filing cabinets. It wasn't fun, but now rules have changed, luckily, at least for me. For you guys as well, obviously, you want to retain records. It talks about the acceptable location of the brokerage office because not all locations are acceptable. It says as long as local zoning allows it and your HOA don't have a problem with you doing so, you can set up your primary brokerage office within your own what? Residence. Isn't that a beautiful thing? Imagine as a new broker having this opportunity. to start within your own home and then branch out. Can an associate open up their own brokerage office? Can a sales associate open up their own brokerage office? No.
No.
Can a broker associate open? We'll see that confirmed for us, but we already know that. Look, online's 24 and 25. Every new location would be registered with DeBeeper as a what type of office?
Yeah.
Every new location would be registered with DeBeeper as a what type of office?
Right.
Yeah. You pay the appropriate registration fees, maybe $100. You basically buy the license, but you have to meet the requirements of the location. We talked about those requirements. Any questions about this? Very simple, right? I want to mention a feature of branch offices. Is there any limit to the amount of offices one broker can have? No, they can have multiple licenses, multiple locations. You remember that from yesterday. If you look on line 36, though, registrations that are issued for each office are not what? Can you close down one location and use the same registration license to open up another? No. Every location is unique, must be registered separately, issued its own unique license. There's only one exception to it, but I feel so silly mentioning because it's so rare that this is going to happen. If you move back into a location that was previously registered, then you can request to be reissued the same license. When is that going to happen? It doesn't work in one location. You move to another location. It doesn't work there. You move back to the previous location. Maybe if it's your own residence, I guess. I don't know. But go to page 91. I want to share with you what this is. Something called a temporary shelter that exists in our business. I'll give you an example so you can better understand. Have you ever seen a trailer sitting on a construction site of a new subdivision? You ever see that before? It's temporary, right? They just drop it in place so they can handle some operations. But here's the thing. Those temporary shelters, because they're temporary, they're not fixed to the ground, they're not permanent, they're not long-term, cannot operate as a brokerage office. That's the rule. Has to have a physical address, be permanent. Remember the feature of a brokerage office back on the previous page? Look on line 11. Building of what type of construction? Stationary, not mobile, not temporary. And that's why in a new subdivision, they conduct sales usually out of a model home because it's fixed, it's stationary. You're not allowed to conduct business out of that temporary shelter. Very simple concept. And then when they sell out the entire community, they convert that office back into a house and sell it as an inventory home. And usually those are the best ones, right? They want to make it look nice because that's the model home. So you want to buy that one. Anyhow, office signs, very simple topic as well. The sign that you maintain at the entrance must contain some information. The trade name, if you have one, the name of the business, the broker's name that has to be on there. But you might only be operating under your personal name. Some people do that. And you might not have a business name yet or a business entity. Okay, fair enough. And you have to include the words licensed real estate broker. Anything else is additional, unnecessary. And this is how you're going to be tested for question what? Question what? 6. You're welcome. Look at this example. You see this example of a sign? Based on what we just learned, I'm testing you, and what you're going to see for 6. What information does not have to be included? The associate, yeah. You don't have to include the name of the associates. You'll see that here, look. You see that? Names of the associates don't have to be included. But you knew that because of what we described. Let's move on. Go to page. This is all preliminary stuff. In my opinion, this is not the most important part of the unit, even though you might be tested on it. Advertising on the next page. You see advertising? Let's talk about key concepts of advertising. The most important feature of advertisements for you as an associate when advertising yourself, promoting yourself, working under the supervision of a broker within a brokerage company is this. All advertisements must be in the name of the what? That's it. If I can simplify this section, that's what the most important feature. Any advertisement, you can go crazy with ads. Business cards, that's an advertisement. Wrapping your car, magnet on the side of your car, billboards, TV, radio, all of that. You can go crazy. I've done every form of advertising under the sun. I'm telling you right now. I used to produce music. That's what I thought I was going to do. I didn't tell you my backstory, did I? I didn't share it with you. Okay. I don't know if that's a compliment. All right. Maybe it's the jacket today. I don't know. But here's the thing. So I started when I was 18. And at that age, I never thought I was going to be in real estate. I thought I was going to be in music. I was producing music, and I worked with major artists, and I had some traction. I wasn't making money yet, but I wanted to make money because I didn't like to rely on my parents. I'm wired that way. I wanted to carve my own path. And my sister started working at a very young age, like 16. She always had a job. She's pretty blonde, blue eyes. It's hard for me to get a job. And I saw her independence. I'm just realizing this now, by the way. This is the first time I've mentioned seeing my sister get a job and her independence and being able to like go out with her friends and do stuff. I was like, I want that. So I decided to get my real estate license. And I decided to give it a shot. What 18-year-old, right? So I took my state exam. I told you I didn't pass on the first attempt. I got a 74 on my first attempt.
Which is the biggest insult in your
It was tough dealing with that, but I persevered. I passed the second time, and I got 100% on my second attempt. They don't tell you what your score is, but that's the story I'm sticking with, okay? You can't prove me wrong, so anyhow, I passed. And my first job ever was selling timeshare. I'll talk more about that tomorrow. And the experience that I had selling timeshare was an amazing experience. But I knew that I didn't want to stop there. I wanted to get into other things. So I knew I wanted to get into residential, then commercial, and then try all these different things out. I was just so fascinated with the business and so many different things you can learn about the business and ways you can make money and ways you can invest. And ultimately, I'm thinking I want to invest. I want to buy properties. That's what I want to do. And I bought my first property when I was 19. I bought a condo. I made good money when I sold it. I rented out for a little bit and then I sold it. I bought another house, bought another house, bought another house, and I bought dozens of properties and flipped them and so forth. But I got my sales associate license, then I got my mortgage license, appraiser's license. I just started collecting licenses, broker's license, opened up my own brokerage office. I still have it, Cameron Realty. I started my own school, Cameron Academy. Been in business for over 20 years. And I invested and I started my investment firm and did property management. I do a lot of different things. I would say my passion, though, besides teaching, I love teaching, even though I don't have to teach. I still love getting behind a podium in front of a classroom, talking about real estate. It's fun for me, and hopefully you see that throughout this 2-week session. I like to say that not everybody can teach. I've had really horrible experiences throughout my academic career. I don't know if you can relate to that. And you remember your really good teachers and the really horrible ones. No in between. And I would say that I had a horrible experience when I got my license, when I took class. It was with one of the schools that you guys mentioned. And it was basically somebody as old as dust standing behind a podium. I don't like to be behind a podium. I like to move around. But I'm doing hybrid. I'm teaching online, so I got the webcam there. And I have a AI tracking webcam that I'll set up at a certain point. I just want to make sure I get other things set up. But anyhow, they basically read me the entire textbook. They stood behind the entire verbatim. No interpretation. Okay, it's not like let's stick to the most important parts. No, it's like I could have read the textbook on my own. Thanks. It was a horrible investment in that school at the time, and I heard that they're still around until they went out of business. But anyhow, I decided if I'm going to bring value, I recognize I could bring value in real estate education because everybody in this business that's teaching real estate is like 30 years my senior. It's just, it is what it is. Nobody is thinking about teaching real estate. It's not a sexy title. However, I wanted to bring technology. I wanted to do a lot of other things, and it was just lacking. And I wanted to enhance the experience, and I did that, and we've achieved a lot of success over the years. Real estate is a seasonal business. Not too many people are thinking about getting their real estate license right now. We had this discussion, Dawson. And Dawson, I love his philosophy. He said, I think it's the best time to get a real estate license. Not just because I want to fill up a class of students, but I do agree with that because now is slow. You want to learn while it's slow. I mean, come on. You want to learn while it's slow. So when it picks up, you're ready to fire on all cylinders. Doesn't that make sense? It's just, but not everybody thinks like that. So I commend you for signing up for class during this time when it's slow to learn, to take advantage of this opportunity and grow in this business. And you're going to take over. I have confidence. I see that potential in you guys. I really do. Just by being in this class during this time period, this uncertainty we're going through is telling me your character and what type of person you are. So I love that. Anyhow, that's a little piece of my story. I work with a few major artists like I don't know, Brandy. I worked with 2 Chainz. I worked with several pop artists, and nothing that got on an album. Unfortunately, I wasn't making any money. I worked with them. They recorded the songs, and I still have the songs, but they didn't pick it up for the album. So then I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'll try to find like a independent artist and all this stuff. It just didn't go anywhere. So I'm like, I want to make money. And then when I got into real estate, I didn't look back. And I haven't been producing music since, which is a shame because I enjoyed producing music. But God has a different purpose for me. And purpose is a key word and a calling. So I think this is where I need to be.
Have your retirement to scratch tables.
I'm not a DJ, okay? I know you're stuck on the DJ thing. I could be. I mean, this guy.
I see it.
Okay. All right. Buy me the equipment. I'll learn it. Anyhow. So that's my background. Hopefully that helps you guys out and gives you a perspective of things. You know, I started with uncertainty, not knowing what I wanted to do. And here I am teaching real estate. So, and investing and all that stuff. And if that's what you want to do, it starts here. This is the beginning. Anyhow, we talked about all the different ways you could advertise yourself: flyers, business cards, billboards, newspapers. But when we move a little bit further down, we see team or group advertising. Have you ever heard of teams that are created within a brokerage company? They have to conform to some advertising requirements as well. They can't promote themselves as if they're a brokerage company because they just created a team within the brokerage. And that's why we're going to discuss some requirements here. You see each team file with the registered broker in the name of the licensee, whom the team, I want you to highlight this, goes on to the next page. But that's not the most important part of it. It's right here. You can highlight that, continue to highlight, but it's right here. It says the team or group must advertise in the name of the what? Name of the brokerage company. And this is a little bit petty, but it says the team or group name cannot be larger than the brokerage company name. Really? It's a requirement. It's right here. Look on lines 5 and 6.
Like with the FREC step in,
You could be penalized.
That is insane. Okay, good enough.
Because then it's a form of false advertising. You're giving the appearance to the public that you are the brokerage company if it appears more prominently than the brokerage company name, and you can't do so because you're just a team. Okay. There's certain names that you're allowed to use when creating your team name. And we'll see the names that you're not allowed to use here. Stay away from those. And what you're going to be tested on for this question is if you know the names that you're not allowed to use, you're going to be able to answer the if the question says, what name are you allowed to use? So I'm giving you a hint. You're welcome. Advertising key concepts is what we already described. Look, again, the third, fourth time we've seen it. Must include the name of the brokerage company. Another feature, I assume you're going to put your name in the ad. Why would you spend money on advertisement if your name is not in it? You want to promote yourself. You are the brand. You know that, right? You're the brand. This could be the first handshake with somebody because you might promote yourself online. So how does this look? People are going to judge you. I know people should not, but there are studies that have been done by major universities asking sellers why they chose a listing agent, one versus another, that they found online. The number one reason is because of their profile picture. Really? Not because of their reviews or things that you would think, just common sense, but no, it's because of their profile picture. Oh, I like the way that person looks. I like their smile, right? I like their background. And if you're selling property in Florida and somebody found you online that lives in Pennsylvania and they want everything that Florida has to bring, what do they want to see? They don't want to see snow in the background. They don't. You understand? They want to see beach. They want to see palm trees. They want to see beautiful blue skies. Probably not a Hawaiian shirt. Maybe if you're in Hawaii. And actually, real estate agents in Hawaii, my family went several times. I always look at their profile pictures. They're wearing Hawaiian shirts with flower necklaces. They call them leis, and with pools and beaches and so forth in the background. It's not really professional, but you're painting a picture of what you're trying to convey what you're trying to sell to these people. You're selling them the island dream. Same thing for Florida, but a little bit more professional recommendation. And nothing pixelated, high res, keep it classy. If you use a nickname, make sure that you at least include your last name as registered. That's here as well. You have to include your last name even if you use a nickname. What else? The brokerage company's phone number and address do not have to appear on the ad. Team or group names cannot be larger than the name of the brokerage company. I already talked about that. Any questions here?
One, so
Yes.
if my name is, let's say registered as Dawson Ford with the Beaver, and I do a advertisement, I could go by Jake as long as it's Jake Ford, right?
Yes.
Okay, just clarifying.
Yeah. But be classy with your nicknames as well. I mean, I grew up with a friend, his whole family called him Booby.
You want to advertisement.
Booby Johnson, you're a local real estate agent. List your house with me. I'm not listing with Booby. Just saying. Blind advertisements. This is when you fail to include the name of the brokerage company within your ad. Don't you see it here? It says blind advertisement. Advertisements must clearly reveal the name of the brokerage firm, and if you don't, it's blind advertisement. Lines 15 through 17, you'll see it. So just include it. Otherwise, you're giving the appearance to the public that you are the brokerage. That's false advertising. Blind advertisement is a type of false advertising. And when it comes to false advertising, just don't do it. It's as simple as that. You can easily avoid it. Your brokerage company policy might stipulate that you have to bring any advertisements to them first so they can approve it, and then you can promote yourself. Just comply with the policy. But false advertising, we'll talk about this in Unit 6. But what do you need to know? Lines 12 and 13. It's a misdemeanor of the what degree?
Second.
Oh, yeah. So don't do it. I'm going to come back to this. We'll talk about it in Unit 6 and unpack that a little bit. Go to page 95. Internet sites. All forms of advertising, including social media. Social media is internet, right? Include the name of the brokerage company. That's the most important feature. Isn't that here again? Include the name of the brokerage. Come on, man. I think we get it. When it comes to unauthorized use of association names, they're talking about don't call yourself a realtor unless you have a current membership. Isn't that common sense?
Trademark.
Exactly. It's a registered trademark. Not only could it be false advertising, but also trademark infringement. So you want to avoid that. Do I have to highlight this? Do you understand? Don't call yourself a realtor unless you have a current membership. Okay. This is interesting, and I think this is for personal reasons. When you are selling your own property, listing your own property as a real estate agent, or purchasing property, but you're also a real estate agent, must you disclose?
Yes.
The answer is yes. It says at time of, says licensee must include personal name and contact information. It usually says serious negotiations right here. Yep.
This specifically
You see?
covers-
On line 21. You see, when you start entering into serious negotiations, disclose, hey, by the way, I'm also a real estate agent. Why though? What's the purpose? Why is this requirement in existence? Well, don't you possess some superior knowledge? Look, because a licensee, look on line 19, has superior knowledge, expertise in real estate. That's why you have to disclose. That makes sense. By disclosing, you give them an opportunity to prepare themselves for the rest of the transaction, get their own representation if they don't have complete confidence that you're going to look out for their best interests. And you're probably not, because I would assume you have a single agent relationship. You have a fiduciary relationship with yourself.
Yep.
Question.
Yeah, so in this specific scenario,
Mhm.
What's the best way to protect yourself? Can you just orally say it, or should you have a document signed to show that they understand that you are a licensee? What's the best way to handle that?
You could say it, but if you want to have supporting evidence, then you just have it in writing. Send them a text, send them an email,
Something
put it in the agreement. It's very simple. Actually, when you're listing property and you're putting it in MLS, you actually have to indicate if the listing agent is also the owner. Now, the public doesn't see that in Zillow, but other realtors that have access can see, oh, I see, they're also the owner of this property, and that's enough disclosure. But if you have a for sale by owner sign in the front yard, you could do that because you're still the owner, and they call you, say, oh, by the way, I'm a real estate agent. Send them a text. It's okay. Telephone solicitation, randomly bothering strangers for the purpose of selling goods and services. Look on line 29. There's a federal law that prevents certain actions when selling people over the phone, soliciting people over the phone. It's called the TCPA, Telephone Consumer Protection Act. Have you ever heard of this? And people put their number on a list to prevent these solicitations. What's the name of this list? It's the National, look on line 30, do not call list or registry. It's free. But violators could be fined per illegal call. Each illegal call, you'll see on line 35. Who enforces? The FCC. FCC, the Federal Communications Commission. Now, these companies can't call you if you're on the list. We're talking about the National Do Not Call list or the DNC list. But if you're not on the list, then they can solicit you only during a certain time period, within a time period. But don't worry, it's only between 8 a.m. and 9 p.m., basically the whole flipping day. And if they violate, they can get fined per legal call. Last time I checked, it was $16,000, but it might have increased. Mm-hmm. If you can catch them. That's the key, right? They got deflectors, blockers, all kinds of stuff. Okay, fine for violation of the National Do Not Call list. Let's see. As high as 43,792
That's
per call. This includes tech. Yeah, but they're very bad at collecting against these violators, going after violators for these amounts. And it includes text messages as well. It does. Now, and pre-recorded calls, robocalls, all that. Go to page 96. Cold calling people is what we're talking about, because you want to promote yourself, you want to get leads, you want to constantly be involved in lead generation, and cold calling is a way to do it. Maybe you got a list online, you paid for it. You got to make sure that list is scrubbed first. Have you ever heard of scrubbing a list? It means that they removed all the numbers that are on the National Do Not Call Registry. So that way you're not in violation if you call. Any questions on that? In the state of Florida, we have a separate list because, let's face it, most people are not going to sue one of these companies that are soliciting them over the phone for violation of the National Do Not Call list and take them to federal court over a phone call or a text. Most people just block, let it go, whatever the case may be. Even though they could be fined, you can report them and so forth. But these companies still call you, right? Anybody's number on this list? My number's on the list. I still get the phone calls. So that's why we have a list that you could put your number on for free here in Florida through the Department of Agriculture. Weird. Just like a concealed weapons permit or whatever. You'll see right here, Department of Agriculture. And it's easier to enforce at a state level versus a federal level. So that's why you would also put your number on this list. Apply online. Very simple. And they can get fined per illegal call. I think that one is 11,000 last time I checked.
Still,
11,000 per legal call for violation of the Florida list. Now, what's the difference? The Florida list, the national list are basically the same, except for the major difference is that here in Florida, you can call for sale by owners, like the sign they have in the front yard with their phone number, and try to solicit them for maybe a listing opportunity. Hey, I noticed you're listing for sale by owner. Did you want to get more exposure? I can put it in the MLS for you, put on Zillow, Trulia, all those websites, realtor.com. But if their number is on the National Do Not Call list, then no. The only way that you can solicit them is, you'll see right here, it says, the federal law provides the following exceptions to the rule. We're talking about federal, not state. If you see a for sale by owner sign, you can call them even if they're on the National Do Not Call list, but not to try to get the listing from them, only if you have a serious buyer lined up, to try to schedule a tour, ask them, hey, listen, if I bring a buyer, are you willing to pay a commission? God bless you. Salute. Here we go. Class exam question. If you can prove you have an established business relationship with somebody in the past how many months? 18 months, you can call them without violation of the National Do Not Call list. It's crazy. See like people walking in the hallway and they're like
upper neck.
wearing sweaters too. So it's not just us. But let's move on. And the last one. Do you know the purpose of an open house? Have you ever seen an open house?
Yeah.
What's the purpose of an open house?
As the agent to get buyers. No.
Most people think, yes, you're right, it's to get buyers, but most people think it's for that property that you're hosting the open house for.
Just general marketing too.
It's because that person, that family that comes in, they might not be interested in that property. But the fact that they're there that day means they're what? They're looking, they're in the market, and you want to help them so you can make commish, right? When they walk through the front door, what do you make sure they do? Oh, sign in for your contact information. And the question is, are you represented? If they say no, okay. They weren't interested in this property. They're not represented. Hey, can I help you look? Can I send you some other properties that are similar size? What about this property attracted you to come into the open house? Was it the school district? Was it the community? Was it the size of the house? Why did you not like it? You do some discovery. And you can solicit that list that you collect for up to how many months? 3 months. Any questions about this? Just as a summary, the difference between Florida and federal. Here's the difference. They're basically the same with the following exception. For sale by owners in Florida, you can still call, try to get the listing, but if their number is on the national do not call list, you can't call them unless you're trying to schedule a tour, have a serious buyer. Any questions here? I feel like we're in a hospital right now. So freezing. Okay, I'm going to go to the front and complain. Go to page 97. Email. That's what they call it. Electronic. Come on, it's email. Did you know there's a federal law that prevents you from spamming people? Because that's one way you might try to get more business, email blasts. You have to prove that they opted in to receive the emails. And you have to conform to the following features. This is good, just general information. Obviously, don't provide any false, deceptive information on the subject line, the body, valid physical postal address has to be included. You have to include an opt-out, like an unsubscribe button. I like now on the phone where at the top you can click unsubscribe. Saves you from going through those 3-4 steps to get off the list. Any questions here? All right, this is what I really wanted to get to. On page 99 or 98? Can't see. 98? We're making good time here, so bear with me. This is what I really wanted to get to. 99. Escrow or trust accounts. Let's discuss now the money that's given to you, the real estate agent, to hold in trust. We talked about this yesterday. I said, what's the only money you could possibly see and be responsible for throughout the duration of the transaction before you actually receive your commission? The deposit. It goes by a few other names. We'll talk about those names in just a moment. So they give a deposit when their offer is accepted based on the terms of the contract, whatever is negotiated for that deposit amount. But then they might hand you a check. What do you do with it? We're going to talk about that. It's in front of us. You have to know the procedures because this unit is about procedures, right? You'll see it here, what I just mentioned to you. Typically, when a buyer makes an offer, the buyer includes the offer deposit to show what? To show what? Good faith. That the buyer is actually what? Serious about purchasing the property. It's a sum of money or its equivalent delivered to a real estate licensee as earnest money or payment or partial payment in connection with a real estate transaction, and it goes by a few other names. Could be earnest money deposit, good faith deposit, escrow deposit, binder deposit, just the deposit, trust funds. And this money is held in a what type of account? Yes. Do you know what an escrow account is?
Basically, do not touch it now.
Yeah, it's an account set up. It's a business account set up, used to hold on to other people's money. You're holding third-party funds. In this case, you're holding on to whose money? The buyer throughout the duration of the transaction until the property closes, and then that money is dispersed. The buyer gets credit for that deposit towards the purchase price, right? Or you could be holding on to the tenant's money if the brokerage does property management. You're going to hold on to it for a little bit longer, right? Typical lease agreement is how long? A year? Yeah. We'll see details of that. You're going to be tested on this. So what do we need to know first? What we just highlighted, obviously. I want to mention something to you. It's not here in front of us. We're going to see it later on in this unit. As a broker, I'm not required to open up an escrow account. I'm not required to hold on to the buyer's money. But you are probably assuming that the broker is holding on to this money. And that's an okay assumption because that does exist in our business, but it's not required for me to do it. You, as an alternative, who can hold on to the deposit? If I'm not going to do it, either a Florida-based title company or a Florida-based attorney. They provide this service. They call it settlement or closing services for a real estate transaction. And that's what I want. I'm not going to hold on to other people's money if I don't have to. Money equals liability. Why would I take on liability? Transactions fail all the time. And then buyer and seller fight over that money. Do I want to be caught in the middle? No. Why take on that responsibility if I don't need to? But I do have an escrow account only for property management. Because if you do property management, you kind of need it. But for sale transactions, normal sale transactions, I'm not going to hold on to buyer's money. No. Use a title company, use the attorney. No, thank you. I'm just giving you understanding of what happens in real life versus what you're tested on for your exam. In real life, it's title company or an attorney. But you're going to learn the rules and you're going to be tested on the rules for the broker holding on to the money. So let's talk about it. And your responsibility if you get the money from a buyer. As an associate, when you start practicing, you're not going to hold on to this money. Even if the buyer tries to hand you a check, most likely the title company, if you're using a title company in Florida, they give wiring instructions to the buyer. And they don't want to check. They don't even want to check. So you say, hey, I appreciate you coming up with the deposit check, but the title company is going to send you wiring instructions. So you don't even see it. You don't touch it. No responsibility for you nor the brokerage company. That's great, isn't it? In New York or other states, all they use is lawyers, attorneys to coordinate the closing of a real estate transaction. Here in Florida, we have both options. Title company and attorneys can do it. Just so you know, I don't know if you're familiar with that. So you'll see right here, as a broker, I can have an escrow account, one escrow account to hold on to buyers' deposits and tenants' deposits. I can keep it in the same account. The question I get from time to time is, okay, Michael, when you set up the escrow account, do you have to set up a separate escrow account for every single transaction? No, only one. I mean, imagine how crazy that would be. Every time you have to set up an escrow account for, I mean, it would be a lot. So you see right here, it says brokers are not required to keep the earnest money deposits separate from rental deposits. I just mentioned that to you, right? Anyhow, let's move on. Where can I set up the escrow account as a broker? You might be tested on this. A Florida commercial bank, credit union, or a savings association. But once again, I mentioned this earlier. Here it is. Florida law does not require brokers to open an escrow account. Didn't I mention that to you? Now, why would I? Because brokers don't want to take the responsibility nor the liability of holding on to other people's money. So they would use a Florida-based title company or a Florida attorney. I mentioned we would see it. Here it is. Okay. Hypothetically, for exam purposes, if you receive a deposit from a buyer you're working with because their offer was accepted and they have to give $1,000 deposit until the transaction closes, they hand you a check. As an associate, what must you do with this money? Immediately turn it over to your what? Broker. This is what we need to know first. Even though it's not common, you need to know it. What's immediately defined as for the associate to turn the money over to their employer? You'll see it here. It says at the end of line 27, no later than by the end of the what? Next business day. Do weekends or holidays count as business days? No. Let me give you an example. If I can get your attention. I'll give you an example. You tell me what you think. You receive a deposit from a buyer on Friday. Monday is Martin Luther King Day. this past Monday. When do you have as an associate to turn it over to your broker?
Tuesday.
By the end of business on Tuesday. This is it. If the office closes at 5 p.m., when must you get the deposit into the office? Before what? Before 5 p.m. What if the broker is not in the office? Are you still obligated to get it into the office? Yes. Even turn it over to a office what? That's acceptable on behalf of the broker. But that's for you, the associate. What about the broker? The broker then has to put the money into a what type of account? Escrow. What's immediately for the broker to do that? It says no later, look on line 34, then by the end of the third business day following receipt by the brokerage of the item to be deposited. But let me explain this because you're going to be tested on it. Can almost guarantee you'll see it for your state exam as well. I need you to pay attention for a second. Otherwise, you can miss it. It says by the end of the third business day, right? For the broker to put it in the escrow account. But this is what you need to know. This is how you're going to be tested, and you'll see it for your homework tonight. The day that the associate got the money from the buyer, that day does not count for the broker. The 3 days they're talking about here start on the next. I'll give you an example. You tell me what you think. An associate collects a deposit from a buyer on Tuesday morning, turns it over to their broker the same afternoon. Thursday is a holiday. When does the broker have to put the money in the escrow account? The day it was collected by the associate was when? Does that day count for the broker? 3 days start on the next, which is what? Wednesday. I said Thursday's a holiday. Skip it. Friday. Skip the weekend. Monday is the correct answer. That's how you're going to be tested. That's the worst case scenario. Any questions? Pretty straightforward.
I do have one question.
Yes.
How tightly does the state or DBEEP or FRC watch over that stuff? Like if you're like a day off, what are the ramifications?
Well, here's the thing. If you don't comply with these time periods, then you could be liable for the money that was to be deposited. Maybe, for instance, they gave you a check, you were supposed to comply with it, but they rearranged funds to make sure they had exactly enough for that time period that you were supposed to comply with, but now you delayed, you were lazy, you turned it over later, and they didn't have enough money, the check bounced. Who's liable? The real estate agent. And then could there be some consequences? Licensure consequences? Yeah. But it's really based on, it's on a complaint basis. They're not watching you like a hawk. It's not like they have eagle eye and they're using AI to track your every single move. But if you're not complying, you cause an adverse loss, then you could be penalized. We'll talk about, you will talk about in Unit 6, complaints, violations, and penalties, and you'll see how that process works. But for now, it's just the rule, not the consequences yet. At the bottom of page 100, highlight this. Personal checks, post-dated checks, insufficient funds. What is a personal check? Well, it's not just like from their personal bank account, but they wrote the deposit out to you, the sales associate, in your name instead of the name of the escrow account where the money is going to be held. So they wrote $10,000 deposit to Dawson Ford for whatever property it is, and they hand it over to you. What must you do with this money? Vacation, shopping spree? No. Cash it. Cash it. Don't spend a penny and turn the exact cash over to the employer? No, not even that. And this is how you're going to be tested. They say, oh yeah, they don't spend a penny of it. Turn it over to the broker by the end of the next business day. Doesn't matter. I'm going to show you the correct procedure. It's in front of you. If they wrote it out to you personally, the best course of action is to get them to do what? Rewrite a whole new check payable to the escrow account, as it should have. But what if they wrote the check and left town? You can't track them down. Get a new check out of them within the correct time period to comply with the contract. then you can immediately, says the associate should immediately endorse the check. What does it mean to endorse? Sign the back and include the words for deposit only to the name of the correct escrow account for which those funds should have been written out to. But here's the thing. I don't know of any bank that would accept this procedure. Just signing the back and say for deposit only goes to another account. Yeah, unless the broker made you a signatory on the escrow account. Do you know what that means? That basically give you access to the account. What broker is going to give you access to their escrow account? Come on. Doesn't make any sense. Go to page 101. What's a post-dated check?
Check written for the future.
Set up, yeah. They stipulated
Forecast.
they put a future date on the check. Here in Florida, we don't care about it. You could put a future date, I can still deposit it the same day. That's not the point though. What if there's an agreement? They wrote the check for a future date and they said, hey, listen, can you wait until the end of the week before you deposit this? I know the contract says this. What do you do in that circumstance? First of all, it's a huge red flag. We're talking about just coming up with the initial deposit for the property. You're buying a $300,000 house. I mean, are you ready to buy this property? You need more time? But maybe they have a really good excuse. I got my money overseas. I got to wire it over. It takes a few days. I found this property at the last minute. Can you just give me a little bit more time? Who must give permission to accept a post-dated check? You would think the broker, but it's actually right here. The seller, it's the deposit is for the seller's property. So the seller has to give final approval. You can provide some guidance, some professional advice. Like, hey, listen, they're asking for more time. I have some follow-up questions. What do you think about it?
And do you have to do like an addendum for that, or is it just verbal?
You should stipulate it. You should put it in writing. Yes, an addendum would suffice because in the contract, it stipulates within what time period you have to turn over the deposit.
Right.
So yes, an addendum would be appropriate. I forget sometimes that I'm talking to a licensed professional already. So here we go. If there is an agreement that you're going to hold on to the money because it's post-dated, you just keep the check in a safe place within the office, a drawer with a lock on it, until the date on the check becomes what? Current, and then immediately deposit into the broker's escrow account. Any questions about this? We're almost at break time, okay? So a little bit less than 10 minutes. So bear with me. We actually covered a lot of ground here. And I think we're going to get through this unit efficiently. But management of the escrow account, I already mentioned this. You remember making somebody a signatory? It means giving somebody access to the account. Like a bookkeeper or whatever the case may be, but still, you got to be careful with that. Delegating authority to have access to the, come on. When you set up the escrow account as a broker, remember they're not required, but if they do, the account could be either interest bearing or what? Non-interest bearing. If it's non-interest bearing, that means the money is just going to what? It's going to sit there. If it's interest bearing, that means the money sitting in the account could possibly gain interest. But in the world of banking, are you going to gain much interest? Fractions of a cent. How long are you holding on to this $1,000 deposit before the transaction closes and you disperse that money? How long? From the time it's collected to the closing date, 30, 45 days maximum for these transactions. You think you're going to gain much interest off of $1,000 deposit, 30, 45 days? No, it's not worth it. And it requires, there's more regulation if you set it up in an interest bearing escrow account. There's more regulation. You'll see it here. It says not only do you have to, broker must get written permission from all parties before putting the money in this type of account. You have to stipulate who gets the interest earned. And a broker could be disciplined if you don't get permission from all parties and determine who gets the interest earned. Does that make sense?
Now, question, some of the bigger buildings down there, like condo buildings that take years to build, we have clients that put a deposit down, which is pretty significant because these condos sell in the millions.
Mhm.
What do you typically see there? I mean, that's a good amount of money that interest would be earned.
Yes, and that would be the broker's call if they're willing to take on this additional responsibility, at least here in Florida. When it comes to pre-sale here in Florida, there's a little bit more regulation. I don't know how it works up north, especially like in New York and so forth for those high-rise condos and doing pre-sale.
Mhm.
Pre-sale business, I travel to Mexico. Not to get too far off topic, but you just triggered something.
Mhm.
Memory of mine. When I go to Mexico, we go probably like 3 times a year. It's all pre-sale over there. They're so big on pre-sale. And like you're saying, it takes several years to construct the building, and they're holding on to all this money. And it's like the only way they can progress in the project a lot of the time is if they're doing these pre-sales and collecting, 20%, 30% from these buyers up front. I don't like that business. It just does something to me. I'm like, okay, so you don't have enough money to actually complete the project. The only way you can get it, what if somebody buys in the very beginning and then nobody else after that? How long is it going to take you to get this project done? It's just, anyhow. Let's continue on. Money to maintain the escrow account. Another reason why a broker doesn't want to open up an escrow account, because there's more regulation. Now it says if you have an escrow account as a broker, there's a maximum on how much you can use of personal money to set it up and maintain it. Because is it free to open up a bank account? No, especially business accounts. You have to use some type of personal money, a minimum balance, whatever the banking regulations are, to set it up. And then on top of that, don't they take like maintenance fees, check printing fees? All of these fees are going to be deducted. So what's the maximum that the broker can use of personal funds, business funds to open up, maintain? It's 1,000. And this is for sale transactions, by the way. That's for sale transactions. What if a broker has a property management business and they're collecting money from tenants now? Well, if you're collecting money from tenants, property management companies, they could be holding on to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. Think about how many tenants you can have, and each tenant is giving several $1,000s when they sign the lease. And you're holding on to it for a longer time period as well. So for this reason, a broker can use up to how much for property management? 5,000 now. Okay. Most do. If the broker is holding on to buyers' deposits for sale transactions, and they also have property management, they would keep it separate. But does the broker have to keep it separate? No, they can keep it in the same account. Deposits from tenants, deposits from buyers, same escrow account. But still, no more than how much to set up and maintain if they're keeping both types of deposits in the same escrow account. No more than what? 5,000.
So that's a hard yeah.
You see right here, Florida does not require separate escrow accounts for property management and sale transactions. But if you're keeping both types of deposits, no more than 5,000. Any questions about this? Next subject is record keeping, but go to page 102. How long must you retain records for, guys? Line 1, 5 years. Any questions about this? Okay.
Sorry, Michael, I do have a question. So back to the last topic of property management.
Yes.
Is it the same laws that apply then if you're holding, tenants of 12 months deposits that you
As
have
far
to,
as setting up an interest-bearing account, what specifically?
right? So if you're setting up the interest-bearing account and you have to have the tenant sign off on who gets the interest?
Yes. So when you're holding on to tenants' deposits, yes, I'm trying not to mix it with something we're going to discuss in Unit 8, which is a
Okay.
landlord providing property management for their own property versus a property management company. But yes, they have to sign off on the fact that you're holding the money in an interest-bearing escrow account, and you have to
Mhm.
stipulate who gets the interest earned.
Okay. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up chapter 8 because that's another question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Next, and we're almost done here, mishandling of the escrowed funds. They're talking about the deposit money. If you, on accident or by purpose, on purpose, spent some of the tenants or buyers' deposit money, that's an illegal act called what? It's called conversion. You need to know that. Also described as misappropriation of escrowed funds, misusing somebody's, unauthorized use of somebody's money. You can highlight this. 10 through 12 and lines 15 through 17. We'll talk about penalties that follow these violations in Unit 6. But for now, it's just we're understanding what could result in penalty, what the violation is, and what it's described as. Let's continue on. Move a little bit further down to line 27. If you, on accident or on purpose, mixed your personal money as a broker or your company's money with the deposits. What's the maximum that a broker can use to set up and maintain a sale escrow account?
Yeah, awesome.
Transactional sales escrow account, no more than 1,000. If they're doing property management, no more than what? So
Bye.
what if you go over those thresholds? On accident or on purpose, it's still illegal, and it's called commingling. Any questions about this? Not only could you be charged with what we described, conversion, misappropriation of escrowed funds, commingling, but also go to page 103. They describe it as failure to account for and deliver. That means you're not keeping track of the money. And even on top of that, culpable negligence, guilty of being careless, which we'll see in a later unit. And when we come back, we'll talk about title company, attorney escrow accounts, and how the rules differ if they provide that service rather than a broker holding onto the money themselves. Any questions?
So if you do go over,
Yes.
does that mean you can just quickly adjust it without saying anything, or do you have to report the minute you go over?
You're in violation if you go over. That's all I'm going to say about that. Not going to say that either.
No
Not going to say don't
self-reporting.
report. Yeah.
I'm picking up what you're putting down.
All right.
Extra money.
Let's take a break. It is 10:42. Take like a little bit more than 15-minute break. Yeah, be back at 11. 11, stretch out, grab a snack, make a phone call, do what you got to do. See you guys. Let's continue where we left off. Our next subject here is we see title company, attorney, escrow accounts. We know that that's most common to utilize their services rather than the broker holding on to the money and taking on that responsibility. But what do you need to know? It's right here. When deposits are placed with a title company or an attorney, the following procedures must be used. So let's go through each one. On the sale contract, you have to indicate the name, address, and telephone number of the escrow agent, the title company or attorney who's holding on to the money. It's on the first page of a sale contract, the standard sale contract we use here in Florida. We call it a FAR contract. You can't miss it. And they ask you, escrow agent. That's the title company, right? The title company's name, address, telephone number, easy enough. Within 10 days, you have to get written verification that they received the deposit from your buyer. The title company, they provide wiring instructions to your buyer. Your buyer wires the money over, and they have to give you evidence that they did what they said they were going to do, turn the money over to the title company within the contracted time period. And within 10 days of that, provide a copy, look at the end of line 40, copy of the verification to the seller's broker.
Hey, Michael, quick question.
Yes.
And maybe this was the first day with that I missed, but are the numerical notations, like number 62, for example, that you have listed there, are those supposed to mean anything to me when
Yes.
I'm looking at it? Okay. Well, if you wouldn't
Yes.
mind going over that again.
This
for
is
me.
So once again, this is what you need to know for your class exam.
Okay.
This information that's already pre-highlighted is what you need to know for class exam, final exam question number
62.
62. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Obviously, I didn't have to do this, but I'm looking out for you guys
Yeah.
because I recognize that this is a stepping stone. We don't give you the license. We prepare you for the state exam so you can pass on your first attempt. But while you're here, give you what you need to know for the final exam. Is that okay? All right. I assume
Yeah.
so. Anyhow, the title company has to follow these procedures as well. So even though you're going to be tested on it, title company knows to comply within 10 days. And they send an email out to all parties involved in the transaction. So it's not like you have to request it and, be knocking on their door every single day. Hey, listen, did you do it? Did you do it? They know to do it. They have to comply with these rules as a licensed title company. Let's continue on. Let's go to page 105. And our next subject, we see notice and settlement procedures. What if the transaction fails? I mentioned this, transactions fail all the time for a number of reasons. Inspection, appraisal, everything under the sun. So what if the transaction fails and both buyer and seller want that deposit? What do you do in this circumstance as a broker that's caught in the middle? That's why I mentioned, don't be that person. When you become a broker, don't set up an escrow account. Let the title company handle that responsibility. Regardless, we're going to be tested on this as if the broker is holding on to the money. What are the procedures for the broker? We'll see here. It's called conflicting demands. When the buyer and the seller are fighting over the deposit for a failed transaction, they're both demanding the deposit, but those demands are conflicting. What must a broker do? If you look at the bottom, line 41, it says the broker who maintains an escrow account, if they receive conflicting demands on the escrowed property, the deposit, the broker must first notify who? Yeah, page 106, line 1. Notify FREC in writing within how many business days? Yes, within 15 business days. And within 30 days, start the escape procedures. We'll talk about what those procedures are in just a moment and what that means, but you're going to be tested on the time period. You have to understand this time period. Within the first 15 days, you must notify who? FREC. And within 30 days total, you have to start the escape procedures. Let me give you a visual of this and how you might be tested. Let's say conflicting demands starts right here at this point. This line represents when conflicting demands begins. Within the first 15 days, what must you do?
Notify FREC.
Yeah, let me just clean it up a little bit. Within the first 15 days, yes, you got to notify FREC. But within total 30 days, you must start the escape procedures. Write that down. So what does that mean for exam purposes? Let me show you. You have up to 15 days to notify who? Yeah, but let's just say you notify them. I'm making this up. Look up here. Within 3 days. How many days do you have left is the question to start the escape procedures. 27. You see basic subtraction? Next. Here's another example. What if you notify FREC in 9 days? You had up to 15, but you notified them in 9. How many days do you have left to start the escape procedures? You got 21 days left. Let's say you notify FREC in 14 days. How many days do you have left now? 16 days to start the escape procedures. You understand how you're going to be tested? Okay.
Knowing a little bit about the FRC, would it be the best to get in as early as possible because they're constantly busy?
Yes. That's if the broker's holding onto the deposit and choosing to be placed in the middle of this conflict rather than just using a title company, give up the ego. Anyhow, we talked about initiating the escape procedures within 30 days, but you're curious, what are those escape procedures? One of them you'll need to know. You'll be tested on this. Class exam question, highlight that. Are you familiar with rent to own? Question mark. Okay. You're also going to be tested on something here at the bottom. Lines 43 to the bottom. Class exam question, lock that in. Are you familiar with rent to own? Question mark. I feel like just telling them, okay, can you Google rent to own and then come back to me so we can have a conversation? You have to educate buyers. Anyhow. Let's go to page 107. There's an acronym used to help you recall the 4 escape procedures. Think of the acronym MALE, M-A-L-E. Let's go through each one. The first one, it's called what? Mediation. Both parties might agree to mediation. I don't like it though. I'll explain why in just a moment. It's when the buyer and the seller choose a trusted, write this down, third what? Third party to make a, write this down, non-binding decision. That's the reason we don't like it. We like avoiding court, use a third party to decide who should get the deposit, but their decision is non-binding, so you don't have to take their advice. So one party could disagree, and then you're right back in the same position where you started. And you have to use maybe more than one of these escape procedures to figure it out. Yes, you could use more than one. And that's why arbitration is the best in our opinion. It's once again where the buyer and the seller choose a trusted what? Third party. But their decision now is legally binding. You'll see that in parentheses already.
Third-party contract.
Third party. Did you know there's professional mediators and arbitrators that exist? They provide this service to resolve conflict. You pay them for the service. Did you know Judge Judy, Judge Joe Brown, Judge Matheson, all of those court TV judges, they're professional arbitrators. Did you know that? Now you know. At least the service they're providing on the TV show. They're doing arbitration. Litigation means I'll see you in what? Yeah. And you want to avoid that. Who decides now?
It's not the beeper with the,
Judge, based on the facts of the case. And their decision is going to be legally what? Binding. But you want to avoid that. So arbitration is the best in our opinion. Handle it outside of court. Get a legally binding decision, less expensive, time consuming, and so forth. But if you can't decide in mediation, you're probably going to end up in court, which you want to avoid. An escrow disbursement order, you're going to be tested on this, is where the buyer and the seller, it's where the broker asks, write this down, for whose advice as to who should get the deposit because the transaction failed. Freck. If you ask Freck for their advice, do they have to provide advice? That's a question. Just take a guess. If you ask Freck for their advice, must they provide advice as to who should get this deposit money? The answer is no. If they give advice, they respond with, okay, this party should get the deposit. Must you take their advice? Write this down. Non-binding. So, no, you don't have to take Freck's advice. But what happens if Freck gives advice, you take their advice, and Freck was wrong? You're later sued because Freck gave you the wrong advice. Does Freck take responsibility for the bad advice? They actually do. And that's why they usually choose not to give advice because they don't want to take on the liability. But what happens in that circumstance? Well, that's what you see on the previous page that you highlighted. It says Freck will reimburse the broker up to how much? It's on line 39. Up to how much? $50,000 for that bad advice. And it's called EDO for short. You'll see it. But if you read it backwards, it makes a little bit more sense. I'll read it out to you. Look up here. You're getting a what? Order from who? What are we talking about? Freck to disperse the escrowed money, the deposit. And it makes a little bit more sense if you read it in that way. But what are you tested on for question 36? Very simple. If I can get your attention. What if you ask Freck for their advice? You're waiting for their response, but you subsequently settle the matter. You figure it out. You don't need Freck's opinion anymore. Must you let Freck know that it's been settled? You have to. Should you keep them in the loop? Of course. And that's what you're tested on, the time period to notify them that it's been settled. Within how many days?
10 business.
Mm-hmm. Says subsequently settled. The broker must notify Freck within 10 business days. Any questions on that? Okay, now we can go to page 107. I don't know how this ended up highlighted. It's interesting, but whatever. We see exceptions to notice and settlement procedures. So essentially, what does that mean? That means when do you not have to notify Freck and go through the escape procedures? If you look up here, what that means is, if I can break it down further, when is the deposit to be given back to the buyer? No questions asked. When is the deposit to be given back to the buyer? No questions asked. Because naturally the buyer's thinking, well, transaction failed. I want to get my deposit back. But the seller might be thinking, well, no, you wasted my time. I want to keep your deposit. So that's conflicting demands, right? But is the buyer actually entitled to getting their money? It's based on these circumstances. So we need to know these three. The first reason where they get their money back is in the result that you don't move forward with the sale of HUD-owned property. Let me explain something to you, because it doesn't describe it well here. Brokers who are entrusted with earnest money deposits concerning a residential sale transaction used by HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and the sale of HUD-owned property are required, or yes, to comply with the earnest money deposit requirements for the specific HUD contract. So they would disperse if that's the case. But here's the thing. HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, their philosophy is that everybody should be a homeowner. We talked about that. So they offer government programs that make it easier for you to qualify to get financing so you can buy a house. Even free down payment assistance, like money from the government to use as a down payment to purchase your primary residence. But there's rules you have to comply with if you get that government money. It comes attached with some conditions. What if you don't comply with those rules? Well, HUD might say, give the money back. What if you don't have the money? It's already spent. Then they'll foreclose. HUD takes property. Do you think they want the responsibility of maintaining the property? No, they sell it. Most likely at a public what? Auction. It's online now. I used to go to these auctions in person. But now you register online as a bidder. You give a deposit. God bless you. It's usually about $1,000. If you're the highest bidder, what do they keep? Your deposit. You have to come up with the remaining balance. If you're not the highest bidder, if you lose the auction, what do they give you back? No questions asked. Your deposit. What we're talking about, no questions asked. Class exam question here is rescission periods. What does rescind mean? The buyer's intent to what? Cancel the sale contract. They're talking about condos here, which we'll talk about in Unit 8. In Florida, if you sign a sale contract with the intention to purchase a condo, you have a right to cancel that sale contract within an allowable time. We don't see it here in front of us. It's going to be Unit 8. But if you do cancel within that time period, you get your money back. And the last reason is based on financing terms. Financing terms. There's a financing section in your sale contract. If the buyer is going to get financing, we know 90% of buyers will. And they don't make an attempt to try to get a loan. They're in violation. They could lose their deposit, right? That's good faith doubt. But what if they made a legitimate attempt to try to secure a loan, but they're denied? They get a denial letter, denial letter, denial letter. Well, the transaction based on the contract is contingent on me getting a loan. And I tried to get the loan, but I'm denied. So they can back out for that reason and get their deposit back. That's the financing clause. Maybe you'll see financing clause here, right here. Of the contract stipulates all of this. Any questions about that? Let's go to page 108. Line 7. Money paid in advance for performing a real estate service. Is it possible for you to collect money up front before you complete the service of real estate? Be compensated before the transaction closes? Yes, it is possible. It's not common, you can imagine. But I've seen where real estate agents, they charge for putting the property in the MLS because maybe it's a for sale by owner. They're thinking, I'm just not getting enough exposure for my property. I want it on Zillow, Truly, or Realtor.com. Well, if you put in the MLS, it blasts throughout the internet. You say, hey, listen, give me $500. I'll put it in the MLS. All the leads will go to you. I'll put your phone number instead of mine. That's possible. It happens. Just want to make sure. Except for timeshare. Timeshare prohibits charging an upfront fee before listing a timeshare unit. And timeshare units are not really, they're not displayed. People don't list them in the MLS. There's separate websites for that. It's getting a little bit warmer in here, right? I'm going to close this. Yeah. But let's move down to sales associates commission. And obviously, this is a good topic. A lot of this is common sense, though. Look, sales associates commission is determined by the agreement they have with their employer, right? You can be employed by either a broker or owner developer. You can't work independently. You can't open up your own office. Any business you bring to the company is whose business? Property of who? The broker. The amount of commission to be paid is always what? Negotiable. And there's no limit on how much you charge. But we knew all of that. It's just a review. You'll see right here on line 24, I mentioned this as well. Your commission, what you earn, is based on the agreement, your employment agreement with either broker, owner, developer. Sales associates are compensated by receiving a share of commission paid by their employer. Typically, there's two brokers working the deal, and you'd split between both brokers, the buyer side and the seller side. But now, because of the rule change, it's affected a lot of the industry. You have to get your commission from the buyer. Even though that's the case, rather than the seller agreeing to pay commission to both sides, what you'll find in a typical real estate transaction, even after this whole big rule change, the seller is still willing to pay a commission to both sides. But you can't put that in an MLS. You have to ask them, hey, listen, is the seller offering any concessions? Is the seller willing to pay a commission if I bring a buyer to the table? If they're not, then you have to get your commission from the buyer. That's the rule change now. All of this should be in a policy manual. Every brokerage company has their own policy manual that breaks down the commission plan, the commission structure. On page 109, all monies earned by associates are to be paid to them by their employer and not directly by the buyer or seller. But what if you're working with a friend, helping them purchase their first house, and they're so happy with how you help them get the best deal on this property, they want to give you a bonus. They want to give you listen, I want to give you $1,000. It's the least I can do. Can you take that money? Yes, take that money, but not directly. You have to instruct them to make that payment out to who? The brokerage. And the broker is entitled to taking their split. It's at their discretion. Whatever is agreed to in your employment agreement. Says should never take extra directly from the buyer or seller, but we already knew that. Including gift cards, certificates, theater tickets, event tickets. You get what I'm saying. Anything of value. Can you share a piece of your commission as an associate with the buyer or the seller that you're working with?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can. It says sharing commission with a party to the transaction. If they're a party to the transaction, yes. Let's see right here. It is possible, but all parties have to be informed. And it's going to be on the closing disclosure as well. Breaks down all the closing expenses, including the commission that's paid and what splits you're giving, rebates, how much you're giving back to your buyer that you're working with. Imagine once again, you're helping your best friend purchase their first home. It's a beautiful moment. And you know they're struggling to pay for the closing costs. And then on top of that, what about moving expenses? Maybe you're going to make several $1,000s off the transaction. You want to help them out and give them a little rebate. You can do that as long as all parties are fully informed.
I mean, what if, as a friend, way after the fact everything happens, you just give them a little money as a gift? It's not considered be the same or?
Should be detailed in the closing disclosure. All parties must be fully informed before doing so. And it's anything of value again. Remember this. Fancy seafood, steakhouse, dinner, whatever the case may be, you have to disclose. Anyhow, antitrust laws, let's talk about two specific antitrust laws that you might be tested on. Price fixing, you need to know what price fixing is. It's where you conspire with other agents to fix commissions or fees for services you perform. Imagine a few brokers that dominate the market. They get with one another and have a secret meeting, conspire, and say, hey, listen, if you're going to list a seller's property from this point on, make sure you charge them at least 3.5%. So that way we can push up our commissions. We don't directly compete with one another, and it's not a race to the bottom. You can't do that. That's price fixing. That's illegal. It's a violation of antitrust laws. And then we see market allocation. There's no one specific market that's allocated to a brokerage company. Like a brokerage company going to homeowners in a subdivision and telling them, hey, listen, if you're going to list your property in this community, you have to list it through us. No, it's an open and competitive market. You can dominate your market based on your efforts, but not by force, coercion, or whatever the case may be. Let's talk about liens on real property for unpaid. Unpaid sales commission. Go to page 110. Page 110. And you see a class exam question here. For residential transactions, it's automatic. I'm sorry, it's not automatic. For residential transactions, if you somehow don't get paid the commission that you're entitled to, you can put a lien against the property, but you have to be expressly authorized to do so in the agreement you have with that party. It's not automatic. It has to be expressed in writing. If you somehow get in a position where you don't pay me the commission that I'm owed, I can put a lien against your property. Do you know what a lien is? I'm going to put this at the top just so you understand what a lien is. A lien is a claim for a debt. That's what a lien is. A lien is a claim for a debt. So what's the debt? It's the commission that you should have paid. And a lien, this claim, is attached to the property for that amount owed. And if you know about liens attached to property, you can foreclose on the property to get paid what's owed. We'll talk about that in a later unit. When it comes to commercial property, whether you're selling or leasing commercial property, it's automatic. It's automatic. If you somehow don't get paid the commission that you're entitled to, you can automatically put a lien against the property for what's owed to you. Unlike residential, it has to be in writing. For commercial property, it's automatic. I mean, when does that happen, really? I mean, the title company, the attorney, whoever's coordinating the closing of the real estate transaction, they know all the agents that are involved. But just in case, now you know. Let's go to page 111. And we see kickbacks, referral fees. You know what a referral fee is, right? They might call it a rebate or an unearned fee. That means you didn't earn by doing the work yourself. You referred out to another agent. They did the work, and then they split with you. Have you ever heard of that circumstance before? Are referral fees acceptable in our business?
Yes.
Can you refer to another agent and they give you a little piece? Yeah, of course. Between active licensed agents, of course. And this happens all the time with areas that you don't have expertise. Maybe you have a commercial deal. You don't know the first thing about commercial property, or you have a property in Miami, but you're here in Central Florida. You got a lead. You can refer to an agent in Miami. They can complete the sale, do all the work, and give you a little piece. Get it in writing. Put together a referral agreement that stipulates what percentage you're getting. but it's acceptable. Also with agents in other states. That's acceptable as well. You have a lead for somebody in North Carolina, you can actually refer to one another. All the commissions go through who? You directly? No, goes through your what? Broker, but it is acceptable. All parties must be fully informed of the kickback. That's number one. Number two, the kickback cannot violate the law. Highlight this law. We'll see this in a later unit. It's going to be unit 13. The law is RESPA. You'll see it here. Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act. This is the law that regulates the money exchanged upon closing of a real estate transaction, including referral fees, what we're talking about. That's money that's exchanged. This law says that you're not allowed to receive a referral fee when you direct buyers, sellers to a title company for settlement services, a lawyer for legal services. You'll see the list right here. It says settlement services, including title searches, title insurance, attorney services, surveys, credit reports, appraisals. You cannot receive a kickback for those. But if you get your mortgage license, you can refer and receive a piece of the loan. If you get your insurance license, same thing. All you have to do, if you're looking for this course, mortgage license, I'm going to preach how important it is. It's a 22-hour class. You go to the website, you put in Florida MLO, mortgage loan originator, or put Florida mortgage license, and it will pop up. 22-hour class, you can do that on a weekend. The insurance, it's called Florida Property and Casualty. That's about 200 hours. Florida Property and Casualty. It's PNC. And that unlocks so much potential for you as a real estate professional. You want to talk about like learning and getting yourself established while things are slow. These are the things you do to make sure that you're going to be successful. What other agent is getting these other licenses so they can maximize on that one real estate transaction? They're thinking, okay, I'm just going to make $3,000 commission on this deal, but you're going to make $6,000, $7,000 off that same transaction where they would just make $3,000 just because you have those other licenses in place. It's just smart business. Let's move on. It's unlawful to share a commission with an unlicensed person other than the seller or buyer in the transaction, but we knew that. We saw that above. It's unlawful for a licensee to pay an unlicensed person for performing real estate services, but we already knew that as well. Any questions about that? Except what we discussed yesterday. If you live in an apartment complex and you refer a tenant to the same apartment complex, you can receive a finder's fee of no more than how much? $50, even though you don't have a license. But we already saw that, highlighted that yesterday. Let's move on. Our last subject of this unit. One of our last subjects. Types of business entities that may register as a brokerage entity. This is for brokers. You're still going to be tested on it as an associate. If you're a broker, you want to set up your own brokerage company. You're most likely going to operate your company under a business entity. Give me an example of a business entity. A type of business entity. LLC, corporation. So the beeper, because remember, you register your office through the beeper, get issued a license through the beeper. They say only certain entities are allowed and other ones you can't set up your real estate empire under. And that's what we're going to go through. Let's talk about the ones that can first. Sole proprietorship. What does sole mean? Sole means one. It's a form of business owned and operated by how many individuals? Exactly, one person. You'll see that on line 17. Those are acceptable. You have to create your business entity, register through the Florida Department of State. I was on this website earlier. I don't know if you mentioned, is sunbiz.org. Have you ever been to this website before? Has anybody set up a business entity before? Raise your hand. For what business?
landscaping.
Landscaping. Anybody else? Set up an LLC corporation and so forth. Okay. But that's where you would go. You go to the Florida Department of State's website. Depending on what state you go to, every state has their own website. And it's the same purpose. Set up your business entity, create your corporation in that state or your LLC in that state. If we move on to page 113, partnerships, it's not sole anymore, it's two or more persons. Every general partner shares in the profits and losses and also take on personal liability for their partners. That's scary. Think about that. That's general partners. They're equally responsible for each other and their actions. Yikes. And that's why most brokerages, they incorporate these limited partners. They bring on, limited partners are silent partners. And you'll see right here in this paragraph, they're not involved with the day-to-day business. Look, no managerial control. They make a cash or property investment, and that's what they're limited to. They can't lose anything beyond that point. Always, for a brokerage, you have to have at least one qualifying broker that's going to be consistent on all three or all of these entities. What if you want to set up your entity where everybody is limited partners? Then you would set up a limited liability partnership. God bless you. And I would say that's most appropriate, right? General partners, why would you want to take on equal responsibility for their actions when you could just do this, limited liability partnership? Anyhow, corporations. Corporation, legal entity created by law, consisting of one or more persons. Here's the thing. When you set up a corporation, you should get help. You should get a professional to help you set up this entity. You don't want to make a mistake because there's tax implications if you make a mistake depending on how you set it up. Is it a S Corp? Is it a, what's the other one? C Corp? You have shareholders. You have to issue stock for your corporation. Who holds all the key positions? President, vice president, secretary, treasurer, directors, officers, meetings that you host, who's taking down the minutes, recording all of this. It's a lot. And you don't want to make a mistake. So you should get some assistance. It's a little bit more time consuming. It costs a little bit more money versus the next one I'm going to show you, which is an LLC. Have you heard of an LLC? LLC, a lot easier to structure, set up, register with the state. I mean, you could do it. I can set up an LLC in less than 30 minutes. And also request an EIN from IRS. That's free as well. That's free. LLC costs money. It's maybe $100 you pay. The EIN, you know what an EIN is, right? Employer identification number. Yeah. That's free from IRS, but you need that in order to open up a bank account for that business. And you just go on request EIN, IRS, and you could Google that and they'll give you, this will be one of the first links. Anyhow, it's a lot simpler to establish, which means it's a lot quicker. It's less money, and it gives you the same protection as if you're a corporation. What do I mean by protection? You have the dexterity as if you're a corporation. So if you get sued, the most you could lose is the LLC and all the assets of the LLC. They can't attack you personally and take away your personal home and your vehicle and all that stuff. If the vehicle is owned by the LLC, that could be jeopardized. But that's one thing. And then, look, protection against personal liability as if you're a corporation, but you pay taxes, you're recognized through IRS as if you're a partnership. So you get those tax benefits. Now, IRS, who knows what's going to happen in the near future? It's going to change from the Internal Revenue Service to the External Revenue Service. Federal income tax might go away, which I think it would unlock our potential because now people are going to spend more money. You don't have to pay the IRS, 20, 30%. You go to other states, you're thinking, okay, I have to pay the state income tax, but then I also have to pay the federal income tax. Now those states that have a state income tax, it doesn't seem like much of a burden. So it unlocks New York, it unlocks all of these states that Florida, we don't charge any state income tax. Texas, no state income tax. California, they charge the state income, but then you have the federal. And it's tough to swallow that pill, but if that goes away, it's going to change things, won't it? It's going to unlock where we move to, how we spend money. We're going to tariff everybody is the philosophy, but we'll see how that works. Vacancies of office. If the only active broker of the corporation, look right here. If the only active broker of the brokerage entity dies, resigns, or is removed from office, their position must be replaced within how many calendar days? Yes. It says you can also get a temporary broker to hold that position for up to 60 days. You'll see it here. It says temporary broker is appointed, registered with the beeper, and the temporary broker may hold the position for up to 60 days to give you more time. And if you still can't find a permanent solution for that position, the qualifying broker, actually I skipped over it. It's actually on line 32. It's going to result in automatic cancellation of the brokerage registration with the beeper. They'll take away that license. Okay. On page 116. Page 116. Business entities that may not operate as a brokerage. The first we see is ostensible partnership. You probably have never heard of this. It's where two or more individuals give the appearance to the public that they're operating as a partnership, but no partnership exists between these two parties. Those are unacceptable because it's deceitful to the public. Corporation sole. What is a corporation sole? Look up here. It's a ecclesiastical or religious organization. Ecclesiastical covers all religions or even nonprofits, a 501c3, for instance. The money that they collect from donations or from followers cannot be used to open up a brokerage office. I think you understand why that's the case. Joint venture. It's where two or more individuals collaborate with one another to handle one transaction or a fixed number of transactions. You'll see that here on lines 25 through 28. And for that reason, it's temporary. This business arrangement is just to handle a transaction, for instance. And then after that, nothing exists between these two parties. So you can't set up a brokerage business under something that is potentially temporary. Business trust. They're doing transactions involving their own property. That's why this is unacceptable. For the same reason, you don't need a real estate license to sell your own property. That's why this is unacceptable. Does not require licensure. Remember, at least to operate a brokerage business, you need a form of licensure. Let's go to page 117. We'll talk about co-ops in Unit 8, but then we come across unincorporated associations. The best example I can give you of an unincorporated association is a homeowners association. Have you ever heard of HOA? The money HOA collects should only be used for the management of the community, should not be used to open up a brokerage office. I think you understand why. Last subject of this unit. Last subject. So you highlighted unincorporated associations, lines 8 through 12, right? 8 through 12. But then we see trade names. A trade name is a business name. It's a fictitious name. It's the name that you create to operate your business under. What do you want to call your business? That's what this is. You would register your business name just like a LLC with the Florida Department of State. A lot of people refer to this as a DBA, doing business as. So your LLC might be Landscaping Essentials LLC, but you don't want to put that on a business card. You just want to call it Landscaping Essentials. So you register a fictitious name through the Florida Department of State, and that gives you the ability to drop off the LLC or call it something completely different. So Landscaping Essentials LLC, doing business as Top Elite Landscaping. It doesn't stop other people from using the same name just by you registering through the state of Florida. To stop people from using the same business name as you have to make it a registered what? Trademark. And you have national and international trademarks. But let's go on to the last subject, page 118, under trade names, forming a professional association. Oh, forming a professional association and the associate's legal name. Let me share something with you. Not that you need to know this for exam purposes, but you should know it for personal reasons. This is going to benefit you once you get your real estate license, because you want to claim as many tax deductions as you can. And you're thinking, okay, well, I'm going to get my real estate license, but I have to be licensed under my legal name, which means I can only be doing business under my legal name. I can't set up an LLC. I can't be paid my commissions under an LLC, so I can write off all of these wonderful deductions like the miles I put on my vehicle, the cell phone bill that I'm using to handle real estate transactions, negotiations, my laptop that I'm writing contracts on, my business attire, everything under the sun, right? You want to write off as much as possible. Your for sale signs, marketing content. You can do that if, as an associate, you set up an LLC for real estate services specifically. But here's how you do it. And you have to follow strict guidelines. You can't just call it whatever you want. Doing real estate services, LLC. You can't do that. When you register, you have to use your legal name. Okay? Only in their legal name, registered with the state. Let me explain it to you because it's broken down in a weird way here. License law further requires sales associates be issued in their legal name, and that's how you set up your LLC. So if it was me, if I was in your position, if I was a sales associate, I would go to the Florida Department of State website, sunbiz.org, and I would create the LLC, Michael Cameron, LLC. That's how you have to set it up. And then they ask you, why are you setting up the LLC? For what type of business? You click real estate services. Then they're going to say, okay, what's your social security number? You put your social security number. And now you go to the beeper who issues your license. You say, hey, listen, I just set up my LLC. Can you reissue me a new license with my LLC on it? And they'll do it. And now when you go to your broker and you say, hey, I have an LLC. This is how I want to be paid. Pay my commissions to Michael Cameron, LLC. And now you can write off all of those wonderful business deductions. Yeah, this is how you save money. Go to page 119. I'll make this simple and then we'll take a break. Let's just say business is good, you need help. Can you hire a personal assistant and pay them a salary? Yes, you can. Do they have to be licensed? No. But if they're unlicensed, can they complete real estate services? No. Can they answer phone calls for you? Can they take messages for you? Yes. Can they put up signs for you? Can they host open houses for you? No. No, they can't. No. Can they be involved in any form of negotiation? No. Can they collect money for you and the brokerage? Unfortunately, they can. I don't agree with it. You'll see it for your homework tonight, a question about this. For the same reason, if you remember in the very beginning of this unit, as an associate, If you receive a deposit from a buyer and your broker is not in the office, can you turn the money over to an office receptionist, secretary, unlicensed personal assistant? Yes, you can. But I don't agree with this because that's a whole lot of liability that you're putting on somebody's shoulders who is not regulated. They don't have a license. And you're going to ultimately take the responsibility of their actions. So why would you do that? I don't agree with it. And they can even run checks to the bank, deposit money, and so forth. Unacceptable in my mind, but Florida law says they're allowed to do it. Any questions here? All right, we're done with this unit. Let's take a break. I want you guys to be back at 12:05, and then we're going to continue. 12:05. going to knock out Unit 6. So Unit 6 doesn't take me that long to cover. It probably takes about 30 minutes, I would say. It's probably going to get done a little bit early, but not that I'm trying to rush through it, but it's just how long it takes. And of course, we do working breaks, so that saves us a little bit of time. We don't take those hour-long lunch breaks where you eat a big meal, you come back lethargic, and you don't want to learn anything. No, we do working breaks, and the temperature keeps us pretty awake as well. It's like a hospital, right? Or no, they don't do that. No, an office, right? It's not about for a work environment. Hospital, this is for sterilization, but
You got the statistical method, it's
Yep.
usually 50-10, 50-10, 50-10 is the most recommended for high quality studying and.
what do you mean
information
50-10?
digestion.
What does that mean?
50 minutes, 10-minute break, 50 minutes, 10-minute break.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, I do that just because I think it's more efficient. However, it's good to hear. Thank you. Confirms a lot. Big studies behind it. All right, Unit 6. Let's get started. Violations of license law, penalties, procedures, complaints, violations, penalties. Let's get into it starting on page 128. I want you to simply highlight these terms, and you can read through the definitions later on. It's just term and definition. And we're going to encounter these in later units anyway and break them down, talk about examples pertaining to each one. But breach of trust is the breaking of a promise. Key to every contract is the promise to do or to not do certain things. If you break that promise, it's called breach. Concealment is a withholding of information. You're hiding something. Culpable negligence, you're guilty of being careless. By the way, I don't know if you remember, but I said that I made flashcards for you, digital flashcards. So if you got the exam prep, I know a few of you have already taken advantage of that. Use a 3-day free trial, and you'll have access to flashcards. So it gives you the definition. You have to guess what the term is, and you can flip it over.
Michael, question there.
Yes.
Can you quickly remind me where we get that again? Is it on your
If
website?
you log into your dashboard, you
Okay.
should be able to see the link there. Or you could just go to our website and use a search tool and put Florida Real Estate Exam Prep. Florida
Okay.
Real Estate Exam Prep, and it'll be there. Check this out. On page 130, we see the complaint process. Let's focus on this. We're talking about when somebody feels that a real estate agent did something unethical, something illegal with a real estate transaction. How is that complaint handled? How many steps are there to the complaint process? Yeah, so step number 1, let's start here. File the what? Yeah. Well, who is a complaint filed with? But you'll notice specifically on lines 2 and 3, it says the beeper's what? Division of Real Estate. That's who it's filed with. So step number 1 is to file the complaint. The Division of Real Estate is not going to waste their time. They will only investigate a complaint that is legally sufficient. You'll see legally sufficient, line 9. What does it take to make a complaint legally sufficient? Well, does it violate a Florida statute? Does it violate a Florida statute, a DeBeeper rule, or a Freck rule? If it doesn't violate any of these that we see on the bullet points, they're going to drop the complaint. It's going to be viewed as a frivolous complaint. It's not going to go anywhere. But if it does violate any of what we see on these bullet points, the next step is to investigate. We're going to investigate the complaint. But before we get into it, they unpack a little bit further that first step. Go to page 129. Wait. Oh, no, it's misorganized. Anyhow, those are just terms and definitions. Let's actually go to investigation. I don't know. That's why. Sorry, go to page 131. Excuse me. Page 131, we see investigation. That's step number 2. That's them reading out the complaint. I thought they just got rid of it completely, but I didn't realize I just scanned it incorrectly. So I got to fix that. Investigation is to read out the complaint, read through the details, get down to the bottom of things. And if upon investigation, they believe that what you did, the allegations are going to harm the public further, what they're going to do while they're investigating is something called a summary or emergency suspension order to shut you down immediately until they can hash things out. Stop you from practicing real estate is what it means. They say everything in real estate is negotiable, and apparently so are complaints, but I misscanned this as well. All right, it's right here. Page 133. That's where we are, page 133. Is that right or no?
I mean, the next page is 32.
32. Okay. Just bear with me. Where did it go?
Waste control F.
Fraud
132.
under 129.
Okay. So weird. Did I skip over it? No, I didn't skip over it. It is what it is.
You want us to borrow my book?
Yeah, let me see. Do things old school here. Okay. So summary emergency suspension order. Now, next step is probable cause. Probable cause determination. I'll rescan it. I'll get it out to you guys online. Don't worry about it. But if you go back to the 7 steps, we'll see right here. Step number 3 is what we're on. Probable cause determination. Now, how many members of FREC are there? If you remember from yesterday, there's 7 total members of FREC. So the state will choose 2 out of the 7 members of FREC to be a part of something called the probable cause panel. Probable cause panel. They'll even choose a former member of FREC if they can't get 2 current members. But they want people to have a real estate license. They're not going to choose the consumer members because they want them to have base knowledge of real estate license law. The whole point is to understand what they're seeing in a complaint that was filed against a real estate licensee. So they want them to have a license. Regardless, if probable cause is determined by the probable cause panel, 2 FREC members, it's reasonable grounds for prosecution. You'll see that in front of you under probable cause on page 132. You see reasonable grounds for prosecution is probable cause. You see that under the title? Anyhow. So if there is probable cause, it's going to move on to the next step, which is something I did scan, and it's the formal complaint. Let me get there. Yes, it's on page 133, formal complaint. This is the 4th step. So essentially, it's gone through 3 steps already before we get to a formal complaint that's sent out to the licensee. So it's gone through all of these things before the licensee actually knows that a complaint was filed against them. And now the licensee has an opportunity to explain their side of the story because there's 3 sides to every story. Your side, my side, and the what? And the truth. How do they get the truth if they're only getting one side of the story? So licensee, what do you have to say for yourself? And they submit a response, but they have within a certain time period to do so. It's on line 25. It's called the election of rights. And it's within 21 days. 3 weeks. Step number 1. Do not dispute the allegations and request an informal hearing. Step number 2, or the second option, excuse me. Dispute the allegations, request a formal hearing, or a last option is to not dispute the allegations and waive your right to be heard. But let's move on to the next page, page 134, and this is what I skipped over. Yeah. On page 134, they send this complaint out to you, the licensee. They want your response, but everything in real estate is negotiable, and apparently so are complaints. So what do you have in front of you? A settlement stipulation. A settlement means you're resolving the matter before it goes any further. Stipulation is an agreement between you and your legal representation and the attorney for the division of real estate. One stipulation could be to give up your license walk away from the real estate business. Isn't that what we see here? Voluntary relinquishment for permanent revocation as an alternative to permanent revocation. Instead of them revoking your license due to disciplinary action and that staying on your permanent record, harming you, potentially preventing you from getting a license somewhere else, this might be the alternative. Maybe the stipulation is, hey, listen, based on what you did, you're probably going to lose your license. But we'll give you an option right now. Give up your license permanently or walk away from the real estate business, and no further disciplinary action will be taken against you. That could be an option. I'm just throwing that out there, and that's what we see in front of us. Understanding the difference between an informal and a formal hearing. How often does FREC meet? Yeah. And that's what the informal hearing is. So if you don't dispute the allegations, you'll see that here. Look, it says the licensee does not dispute the allegations. It's on line 27, but they still want to be heard, their side of the story. FREC meets once a month. And what we see in front of us, the informal hearing, is going to FREC's meeting and saying, hey, listen, this is my side of the story. They set aside some time within their meeting to hear you out. Waiver hearing is when you fail to timely respond to your election of rights. You had to do so within 21 days. They're still going to ask you to come in, but then you don't have the right to fight for your position. See, case proceeds as an informal hearing. A formal hearing means you dispute the allegations. Licensee respondent disputes the allegations. But the formal hearing is an official hearing where it's taken a little bit more serious. It might operate outside of their normal business meetings, the Florida Real Estate Commission, and certain parties would have to be involved. And that's what we'll see on the next page. If you go to page 130, what? 135? Is that the one I did not scan? Let me see. Just bear with me.
Can you search through?
It's not going to, if it's not there, then it's just not going to be there. Oh, probable cause. Hey, I found that. Probable cause. Nice. That one's here. So maybe it is. Let me see.
I say control F that. Type in the number.
It's not going to work like that because it's not a standard PDF. This is a scanned PDF.
I only ask because sometimes even with scanned, it recognizes characters.
Maybe, but just bear with me right now. Okay. It's right here on page 135. Here's the parties that have to be involved. The administrative law judge. But I want you to write this down above it. Who's the administrative law judge? Where do they come from? Who are they appointed by? Write this down. It's DeBeeper. It's DeBeeper's administrative law judge. And they have the right to subpoena people, ask them to come in for witness testimony. You see that? Ask them to come and speak on the behalf of one party versus another. And once the administrative law judge hears both sides, they make a recommended order of findings and conclusions in the complaint case. It's a recommendation. Is that a final order? Is a recommendation final? No. Who issues the final order against the licensee? You'll see it right here. Underline 16. Final order is issued by FREC. FREC issues the final order as a conclusion of a hearing. What if you disagree with the final order? Do you have the right to dispute it? Yes. And that's the final step. Step number 7 is judicial review or appeal. And you have to file that appeal within how many days of receiving the final order? 30 days. What if the final order was to put your license on probation? I'm just giving a hypothetical. That means you can't practice real estate. But what if you have pending deals, pending transactions, and you disagree with this probationary period? You know, eventually they're going to let you practice again, but you're like, no, I think this is too harsh of a penalty. I got pending deals. This is putting food on the plate for my family. I'm the main provider. while I wait for this appeal to be heard, because I think you're going to favor my a decision in my direction, I want to continue practicing real estate. And that's what we are tested on here. You can request something called a stay of enforcement, and that allows you to continue practicing. And they would have to issue a writ of supersedis. You see right here, writ is an order issued by a court that supersedes the action of the Florida Real Estate Commission that allows the licensee to continue practicing until the appeal is heard and resolved. Any questions on this? All right.
So that's the writ of supersedis is, you do that through the regular judicial system. That's not through the FREC.
No, you do it through, this is a license matter.
So that's all.
Yeah. So we're talking about through the Florida Real Estate Commission. Florida Real Estate Commission is ultimately going to decide, but it's usually through the Division of Real Estate. And then they coordinate with FREC. It's a good question. Go to page 138, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right? 136? Okay, give me a second.
I think that's skipping.
Okay, we're good. Go to page 138, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see 137 real quick.
Yeah.
Administrative penalties is what we're on. 137. Ah, okay, here it is. Why is it all reversed? Okay, page 137, administrative penalties. On line 2, I want you to highlight this. There are 3 types of penalties that could be imposed if you violate real estate license law: administrative, civil, and criminal. But if I ask you for state exam purposes, what can FREC do to you? What would your answer be? Well, FREC is limited to what matters. Look, it starts with an A, which means license matters, exactly. So if I were to ask you, can FREC put you in jail? What would your answer be? No. Furthermore, can FREC force you to pay somebody in a lawsuit? No. Can they recommend you serve a jail sentence? Recommend you pay somebody in a lawsuit? Yes. They just can't enforce it themselves. The most severe penalty FREC can impose against a licensee is to do what with their license? Revoke. But we're going to talk about what FREC can do to you. This is all disorganized. I apologize for this. I should have verified. I just trusted that the scanner was actually going to do its thing. All right, go to page 1. No, it's going to be 139, isn't it? Yeah, page 139. We see types of administrative penalties. Yep, we're good. What can DeBeep or Dre do to you? Well, they can issue a notice of noncompliance, which is a warning as a first response to a minor violation. Maybe your sign is not in the right place. By the way, your office sign must be located on the interior or the exterior of the entrance. You have to see it as you enter. So what if it's not, it's sitting on the floor? That's an easy fix. And if it's your first offense, they might just give you a warning. That's what this is, a notice that you're not complying with the rules. You'll see it here. First response, minor violation. And you have within how many calendar days to take care of it? 15 calendar days. If you don't take care of it within 15, could turn into a what? Citation. Or they can go straight to a citation if they woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Citations can range from 250 to what? And you have how many days to take care of it? 30 days. Otherwise, it turns into a final order, which could jeopardize your license. They give you some good examples on the side here, which is nice. Okay. Let's actually go to the next. We see reprimand, violation, found, but not cause to affect economic or physical harm to the public. This is reprimand. But I want to focus on this. What can FREC do to you? Can they deny you from getting a license? Can FREC deny you from getting a license? Yes. If we go back, if we go to the next page, can they put your license on probation? Yes. Can they fine you? Yes. Up to how much? How much can they fine you? Up to $5,000. Can FREC suspend your license? Yes. Up to how long? 10 years. And can FREC revoke your license? Is it permanent? Yes. This is the most severe penalty FREC can impose, and it's a permanent penalty.
Can you ever appeal for that, or is it?
No.
just one time?
When they revoke your license due to disciplinary action, you can never get a license again in the state of Florida. I get the question, can you get a license in another state? Yes. But when you apply for a license somewhere else, just like when you apply for your license in Florida, they're going to ask you, did you ever have a license somewhere else? Did you ever lose the license due to misconduct? And you have to be honest, otherwise they'll find out. Let's continue. Gosh. Sorry, guys. Let's move on to criminal penalties. Yeah, criminal penalties. At the bottom of page, what page is this? I don't even know anymore. Page 1. Oh, what?
41 was.
Go to page 141 real quick. Let me just show you one thing on this page, and then we can go to page 142. When would they revoke your license but not hold penalty prejudice against you? There's only one example, and you'll see this for your homework tonight. If you were issued a license by error, for instance, you are waiting for your sales associate license to come via email, but instead of sales associate, when you get it, it says real estate broker. What are you supposed to do? Open up your own brokerage office, start hiring sales associates. If they catch you for trying to open up your own office, is that illegal? No. The law says you need a broker's license to open up your own office. Well, that's my name. It says real estate broker. Is it illegal? No. Is it unethical? Is it unethical? Yes. If they catch you, they're not going to penalize you because it was their fault. They issued the license by error. And they should have known what type of person you were, okay? It's not going to happen to you guys, by the way. Let's talk about criminal penalties. Criminal penalties. Let me find where it is for you guys. Yes. Page 143 is where it is. We see a second degree what? Misdemeanor, but it's summarized for us here on this chart. You can highlight this chart, but at the top, it's the same information. There's only one example that you're going to find on your exam for a second degree misdemeanor, and it's right here. It says advertising property or services in a fraudulent, false, or deceptive, misleading manner. Isn't that false? What? Advertising. And we talked about this in Unit 5. False advertising in real estate could result in a what degree misdemeanor? What's the fine? What's the penalty that follows this violation? Up to how much? 500 and or up to how much time imprisonment? 60 days. Wow. What about a first degree misdemeanor now? First degree misdemeanor. There's only one example of this. And you'll find this one interesting.
Provide accurate and current rental information for a
It's
fee.
rental information for a fee right here. Failing to provide accurate current rental information for a fee. You can sell rental information because you can go into the MLS, you can print off potential rental properties that your tenant might like. You can sell that list. However, very few brokerages, real estate agents sell the list because if you sell it, you take on liability for its accuracy and the fact that it's up to date. Even though you're not the agent that put that information in the MLS, because you printed it out and sold it, you take responsibility for it. And if you cause loss or harm because of that inaccurate rental list, this is the result. And that's why I mentioned you should give it away for free, then there's no liability. You feel me? Because you don't want a first degree. I'm not a rapper. Anyhow, what's the penalty that follows this violation? Just remember 111. First degree misdemeanor, up to how much of a fine? $1,000 fine and or up to how much time imprisonment? 1 year, 111. And then we come across a third degree what? Yeah, lower level of felony, still felony. Third degree felony could result in up to how much of a fine? 5,000, and or up to how much time imprisonment? 5 years. You'll see that on line 24. But here's the examples that you might come across. We're going to discuss them. Number 1, falsifying information on your license application. You lie to be licensed as a real estate professional. Next is unlicensed activity. You're providing real estate services for compensation without a license. And don't think that just because somebody has a license that they can get away with it either. What if they have an inactive license? They could still be in violation of unlicensed activity, could result in a third degree felony. Yikes. And lastly, do not steal a copy of the state exam, reproduce a copy of the state exam. Should anybody have a copy of the state exam? No. Only DeBeeper and Pearson VUE should have access, unless you go to Miami or something. I'm just kidding. But if you get caught with a smoking gun, you could end up with a third degree felony on your hands, and you end up in prison with rapists, murderers, and God knows what type of people. And they're asking you, so what did you do? Yeah, well, they're going to find out, right? Because the COs, the correctional officers, they share the information. They have, anyhow, I'm not going to get into it. I watch too many TV shows about it and documentaries. But they're going to ask you what you did. You better lie and hope that they don't investigate you. Because if they find out you're in there for stealing a few sheets of paper, you're going to make a new cellmate friend real quick, Bubba or Bertha. Anyhow, next we have, what if you get a license, but then you're convicted after you get a license? You're caught up in some legal trouble. You have to notify the commission within how many days? 30 days. They call that self-reporting. You see? Requirement to self-report. Any questions about that? Our last subject of this unit. Yeah, our last subject of this unit. It's the Real Estate Recovery Fund. And I know I skipped over it. Real Estate Recovery Fund. Help me find it. There we go. I don't know how it got so disorganized. I was really careful too. The Real Estate Recovery Fund. What do you need to know about this? This is our last subject of the unit. I want you to think of the Recovery Fund as a giant piggy bank filled with money from all of us. Now, what money am I talking about? Everybody that applies for a real estate license pays an application what? Fee. Everybody that renews their license has to pay a renewal what? They take a piece out of these fees and put it into this fund, this piggy bank. But what is it set up for? You'll like this. It's a good thing. Reimburses consumers who are financially injured by a what? So it's a safety net in our business for consumers who might lose money because a licensee is a knucklehead and they cause somebody loss. But there's steps you have to go through to seek recovery from this giant piggy bank. So let's talk about that. It's on page 145. The licensee who you're making the claim against has to meet some requirements. They have a current, valid, an active license at the time of the activity that caused the loss. The licensee cannot have also been the buyer, seller, or landlord or tenant within the transaction. They acted in the sole capacity of a real estate licensee in the transaction. They didn't wear any other hat. So that's the licensee who you're making the complaint or the claim against to be reimbursed from the Real Estate Recovery Fund because they cause you loss. But if you go to claimant requirements, that's the person making the claim to be reimbursed, they have to meet some requirements. First, you have to go to court. You have to take the licensee to court first and try to resolve it through the court system. But you know as well as I, the court system is broken and it's very difficult to sue somebody, let alone win the judgment, and then afterwards try to get them to pay you or force them to sell their assets to pay you what you're entitled to. If they file bankruptcy or don't have the money or refuse to pay, then you can go straight to the real estate recovery fund to be reimbursed. Spouses cannot make a claim against one another. There's something suspicious going on there, obviously. One spouse makes a complaint against the other to get recovery from the fund. What's the time period to make a claim against a licensee?
2 years.
Has to be within 2 years of the alleged violation. What's the maximum payout per transaction, per claim? 50,000. And if it's multiple claims, up to how much can be claimed against a licensee to be reimbursed from the recovery fund? 150 aggregate. So that means it could be 10 people at $15,000 each. What if a licensee scammed 15 people out of their $10,000 deposit? Yeah, 100 up to 150. But let's be clear on something. Yes, I said up to $50,000 per claim, but what if you lost a $25,000 deposit because of a licensee's negligence, or they defrauded you out of that money, they stole it from you? What's the most that can be reimbursed from the recovery fund? 25,000. Don't think that you got a lottery ticket and, oh yeah, I can claim up to 50,000, so I'm just going to go straight for the maximum. It stops at the amount you lost due to the licensee. Nothing beyond that. What if you got scammed out of a $60,000 deposit? Stops at 50. That's the most. You have to get the additional money separately outside of what we have here. I know I skipped over something. Compensatory damages. Okay. On page 146. Compensatory damages can be reimbursed only the actual money you lost due to the licensee. You cannot claim punitive damages. You'll see it right here. It says the fund will not reimburse court costs, legal fees, interest, treble damages, punitive damages. It's out the window. You're going to be tested on this for your homework. Pay attention to the details. If they say this person took them to court and they got additional money in punitive damages, what can you get from the real estate recovery fund? Eliminate that. You can't get punitive damages. Do you even know what punitive damages are? I can reveal it to you. It's like to penalize somebody and prevent them from harming another person in the future in the same way. There's a dollar figure that they attach to it to make sure they don't do it. Slap on the wrists. You heard about that woman that went to McDonald's and spilled the coffee on her lap, and she had degree burns on her inner thighs. She got reimbursed medical bills, but she also got about $1 million in punitive damages. Pain and suffering is sometimes what people call it. You've heard of that before. And what will happen to their license until they pay back the recovery fund plus interest? Mandatory suspension. So you can't claim interest as the person making the claim. They call you the claimant. But if the recovery fund had to pay out money, when you reimburse them, they can charge you interest. It's very interesting. And lastly, just like what we talked about in Unit 5, do you remember what an EDO is? You'll see it here as well. It's escrow disbursement what? Let me review with you guys from Unit 5. A transaction fails. The buyer wants to get their money back. The seller says, I don't think so. I wasted my time dealing with you. You're the problem. You're the reason why the transaction failed. I want to keep the deposit. So now they're both demanding that money, but their demands are conflicting. We call it conflicting demands. What do you do in this circumstance as a broker? You must notify who? FREC within 15 days. And you have up to 30 to start the escape procedures. What are the escape procedures? Forms the acronym MAIL. Mediation. Mediation is where the buyer and the seller choose a trusted third party to make a non-binding decision. Arbitration, buyer and seller choose a trusted third party to make a legally binding decision. Litigation means I'll see you in court. Judge will decide. That's going to be legally binding. whatever they determine, and then Edo, what's in front of us. So long way to describe what's in front of us, but I think it kind of sets the table a little bit better. What is Edo? You're asking for whose advice as to who should get the deposit. FREC. If you ask FREC for their advice, do they have to give it? If they give it, must you take it? If they give it and you take it, is FREC responsible? That's what's in front of us. If FREC gave you bad advice, do they reimburse you? But not with their money. It's money from the real estate recovery what? It's all of our money. And that's what you're tested on here. And what's the most they pay out? They'll pay the broker up to $50,000.
In that case,
And no disciplinary action will be taken against the broker. What was that? No. No,
If it goes over, then who owes?
it's the maximum. The maximum is 50.
So then the broker still has to fill out the rest.
I mean, they'll have to try to recover that in a different way, but through the real estate recovery fund, that's the most. Interesting, right? Any questions here? It depends on the circumstances, all circumstantial, but any questions here? Okay, that is units. Unit 6 is it's black and white. It's complaints, violations, and penalties. You just have to know them to protect yourself and others within a real estate transaction. That's what it comes down to. It's very straightforward. When it comes to Unit 5, there's a little bit more ethics, some circumstantial things, procedural things. Here is a little bit different. Any questions on Unit 6? Okay. If there's no questions, we're actually done with our session for today, which means we're done a little bit early. You're still going to get the full amount of credit. What are we doing tonight? Yeah, homework, of course, beside studying. You're going to do the review questions for Units 5 and 6. Make sure you're prepared for tomorrow. We're going to review that. I'm going to fix this PDF, get you the newest versions of that, and it will be in your student portal. Any questions you have for me? Okay, who has submitted? Who's done their fingerprints? Anybody? Yes? You did your fingerprints, or did you schedule, or?
No.
Awesome. Do your fingerprints as soon as possible. You purchase it, the link is active, find a location, schedule your time. You can do it. I mean, it's going to take you 10 minutes. You go in, they'll instruct you, put your fingers down, blah, blah, blah. Okay, it's all done. You already paid. Any questions?
Michael,
then
yeah, I have one.
one
I know
step closer
yesterday
towards getting
you
your
had
license, yeah.
said that in the 5-step guide document
Yes.
that's out on Cameron Academy.
Yes.
I think you referenced that one to say, hey, that kind of breaks down what percentage of questions on the Florida real estate exam will come from specific units we're going over. I didn't
Yes.
see it in there. It was a 2-page document. One was just a title sheet that says 5-step guide. Then behind it had some information on the class exam as well as the Florida state exam, but I don't see the breakout where it kind of gives you that, hey, 20% will be from unit 4 and 5, 50, whatever it is.
Stand by. Hold on. Let me just message. Let me tell the staff.
Mhm.
Can you upload the student candidate handbook to their dashboard? This is the document that gives them the breakdown of percentages that they're tested on for the state exam. Okay.
Perfect.
All right,
Thank you.
on it.
Yep.
We'll
Appreciate it.
take care of it. We got you. Don't worry.
All right. Thanks, man.
All right. Take care. Have a great day. It's hump day, right? Enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers. Bye.